Hogwarts, forbidden son of the Black and White Lord. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, The brand new Slytherin Common Room. The Slytherin Common Room. The current common room is brightly lit, and the previous eerie decoration style has undergone major changes. 6 luxurious crystal chandeliers illuminated the entire common room like daylight, and the previous decorations of skeletons or iron chains had all been abolished. It was replaced by a Gothic decoration style, with exquisite carvings and patterns adorning the eaves of the roof, and on the edge of those exquisite decorations, there were 6 huge flags hanging. 5 of them are the symbol of Slytherin. The python's mark is embroidered with silver thread on the dark green silk. On the side near the French windows, it was a saint's banner, a soaring phoenix and a solemn deathly hallows, which had been significantly altered by the lights in the common room. The bottom of the Black Lake, which used to be full of horror, is now more like an aquarium in the magical world, because many animals are thought at taxis. There are many fish swimming around behind the glass, and the huge squid can be seen from time to time. And the furniture arrangement in the common room has also undergone major changes. The current Slytherin common room is more like a bar built under the water. The place where the bookshelves used to be placed has become a huge bar where drinks can be provided, and of course all the magic learning materials you want can be found for you. The luxurious sofas turned into booths, and in the southeast corner of the entire lounge was a small stage. There's a huge Steinway grand piano on it, a pair of drums and some cellos, and it's currently being played by a 5th-year Slytherin girl. She was wearing the custom-made Slytherin school gown, lowered her head and slowly played the cello, and the sound of the G major concerto kept echoing in this lounge. This is after the change from here. Every time I come here, I always have an illusion that I want to indulge myself here. Do you want something to drink? Holly, strawberry jam and a martini. I'll treat you today. Draco and Harry, who came to the common room, still felt a little uncomfortable looking at the changed common room. And Draco was even more straightforward and wanted to invite Harry to the bar for a drink. Facing Draco's invitation, Miss Hall rolled her lovely eyes, and then she made a sneaky look, motioning the other party to look at the corner of the common room. Following Harry's eyes, Draco's entertainment mood, which was relatively high just now, suddenly cooled down by most of it. It was only seen that Professor Snape was discussing something with Mrs. Potter, and Sirius was like a bitter woman, sitting at a table away from each other, looking at the men and women who were discussing with resentful eyes. Let's go. We still have to send documents to Augustus. Besides, is your grade point enough for this semester? Don't tell me that you exchanged it with galleons again. There was an agreement between us, and you can't break the agreement. Seeing Draco's depressed expression, Harry patted Draco's shoulder and said slowly. Facing Harry's question, Draco's eyes dodged a little, but he quickly adjusted his state and said seriously, "Of course not. As a gentleman, how could I violate the agreement? I just sigh that the change is so great, and relying on the ingenuity of this young man, earning some grade points is not a matter of hand." After saying this, Draco quickly pulled Harry and walked towards the door under the banner of the Saints Association, but in the process of walking, he still looked at the bar of the bar reluctantly. That strawberry flavored kiss mixed with a little alcohol flavor is probably hard to get today, so don't worry about the grade points at all. Anyway, the chief wisely opened up the exchange mode. Even if he has no talent, he can perform on stage to earn grade points. Or like that Professor Zyroge, relying on crazy study in exchange for grade points, but at least he still has a little bit of assets in his hands. This is due to my father, because if the family is going to move away, it may not be good to give myself some pocket money every month. So his father transferred 1% of the shares of a bank to his own name, and Draco was a little reluctant at the beginning. After all, how much dividends can be paid for 1% of the shares? But since I got the first batch of dividends on the record, I no longer have any complaints about this arrangement. That's not a full 2,000 galleons, which can basically cover all his pocket money in the past year, and this kind of dividend will be distributed 4 times a year. excluding the interest that must be paid to Augustus. The financial resources that he can control are far from what he was able to match back then. Because it was morning, many students were still in class. Only some senior students who had no classes or had already entered the review stage were still entertaining in the common room. So after going through some empty tables, Draco and Harry came to the door, knocked softly, and there was an instant answer from inside. "Please come in." The two people who got permission pushed open the door and entered this office, which is an office completely made of glass structure. Rather than an office, it was more like a balcony from the common room extending down to the bottom of the Black Lake, and the office was made entirely of strong glass and metal. Even the floor is made of glass, and a small chandelier provides a weak light source for the entire office. Looking at all kinds of magical and strange underwater creatures swimming past under my feet, especially the big squid with big lantern-like eyes. Draco always felt hairy on his back. He really hated this office. It was dark and damp, and felt that the strange animals above his head might break the glass and eat him at any time. Compared to Draco staring blankly, Harley looked much more professional. She took out a medium-sized metal box from her carry-on bag, put it on Augustus's desk, and report later. "The two things you mentioned, we found them in the room of requirement and your private vault respectively. There is nothing in the room of requirement. However, your private treasury really made us a little bit difficult. This is the first time I have experienced what it feels like to be almost flooded with gold coins. The other thing is that things are too common. Looking for a gold cup in a whole vault, if it wasn't for the detector we built. I want to give us another 3 days. We may not be able to find it." Chapter 152 Education. Draco. Hearing Harry's report, Augusto could only smile wryly. Originally, this kind of thing should be left to Julius. Because he has the same level of magic as himself, even if there is a difference in magic power and magic depth, it is still very easy to use a simple detection magic. However, considering the need to find two things this time, especially when it comes to his own small treasury, in order to prevent himself from becoming the richest wizard overnight and completely becoming a poor class with nothing, Augustus could only please Harry and Draco, who had just taken over as his private secretary. But when he saw Dras was still there in a daze, Augustus felt very displeased, and these people around him basically got a considerable promotion. Excellent ones such as Percy Weasley and Cedric Diggory, a strong contender to become the future Minister of Magic. One has become the leader of the group of senior wizards in the new era, and the two can also provide themselves with more and more important help. But this Mr. Malfoy alone, although he has improved in magic and combat power, he is not serious about other aspects, especially his work. It can only be described as bad. Thinking of this, Augustus said with some malicious intentions, "Miss Hall, you are really getting more and more beautiful, but I still suggest that you don't drink too much alcohol. After all, it is not good for a beautiful lady like you to lose her composure once she gets drunk." What Augustus said, Draco, who was still in a daze just now, woke up like a dream, and he repeatedly waved his hands to signal the other party not to say any more. If this gimmick didn't work, Harry, who was on the side, had sensed a different atmosphere and asked hastily, "What kind of gaff? I don't remember any gaff. I just had a drink with Draco a few days ago, and it was my mother who sent me back to the dormitory to sleep, and Professor Snape was there at the time. How could he allow me to make any gaffes?" Seeing Miss Hall's puzzled eyes, Augustus gave a smirk and continued to speak slowly. "It seems that what I heard is a bit different. What I heard is that you drank 2 glasses of martinis with strawberry jam. There were a lot of gaffes, the most important of which should be that you hugged Draco beside you and kissed him several times on the face and lips. After that, Professor Snape came to stop you, but you bribed him in the same way." These words of Augustus made Miss Hall's face flush with shame, and that flushed face was matched with an angry expression. Although she herself may think that she is very similar now, if it is because of her long hair and her developed figure, Miss Hall still looks very cute now. She first slapped Draco heavily on the side, who wanted to explain, and then saw that the other party wanted to pull her, and stepped on the other's foot hard with her foot. Then he opened the door of the office angrily and strode towards Professor Snape in the corner of the common room. After being beaten, Draco could only sit on the ground holding his feet and asked angrily, Why do you want to be the chief? You agreed to keep this secret, and haven't we already completed the task you gave us? Facing Draco's inquiry, Augustus first gently closed the door of the office to prevent the furious Professor Snape from dragging him out for repairs before he finished speaking. After closing the door, Augustus slowly sat back on the seat behind the desk, then looked at Draco sitting on the ground with his hands on his chin, and said in a cold tone, "Why, I remember that you were the first official member of the Saints I recruited, and you once promised in front of me that you will absolutely take everything seriously and get rid of your stinking problems, study hard to increase your wisdom, and practice magic well to improve your strength. But look at you now. The first two have not made any progress at all, and the last part of strength, you are indeed the fastest improving among these people. But what you can't deny is that there's something Professor Snape told you, and that magical potion I gave you. You should understand your current situation. Originally, your vice president position should be the most powerful position besides the president. But since Mr. Weasley joined, somehow my private secretary has become the number 2 figure in the Saints Church. The other party has now entered the Ministry of Magic to work, and according to the letter sent back by Mr. Barty Crouch, the other party's work effect is very bad. Mr. Draco Malfoy, you should feel a sense of urgency. You are one of the few people around me who I trust completely. Don't let me down. And around me, useless garbage is not allowed." This long series of criticism made Draco feel a little depressed. He knew very well that the other party was doing it for his own good, and at the same time he was very clear that his own efforts were far from enough. But he really doesn't have any mood to work hard now. The only thing he wants to do now is to return to Harry's side and explain this matter to her. His mind is very confused now. He has no interest in knowledge and magic at all, and the only time he can learn it is during the special training by Professor Snape. But Draco felt that the reason why he was able to learn it at that time was entirely because Harry was beside him, looking at him, and giving him encouragement. Seeing that the other party was in a daze again, Augustus also felt a little bit of a headache, so he had to show his whole cards, and said in an unceremonious tone, "If you can't do it, then I'll change Harley back into a boy. I believe that for the sake of her best friend's study, Miss Hall should be able to agree." Compared with the long series of criticisms before, this sentence made Delahy wake up in an instant, and he waved his hands again and again. No, I can do it, and I will definitely be able to meet your expectations of me. As for the means you mentioned, we can't go against the wishes of others, and the other party is completely used to the life of a girl. If you do this, it will disrupt their life. Saying that, Draco stood up quickly, bowed as if opening the door to leave, but just as he turned around, Augustus's calm voice, remembered well, came from behind him. "Don't forget Voldemort. I can't watch you 24 hours a day. The one you love the most is one of the 2 people Voldemort hates the most. I don't want to see you helpless for a certain period of time. Sometimes powerlessness is the most painful thing." Chapter 153 Conversations in the Laboratory. In the laboratory of the villa next to the Black Lake in Hogwarts Castle, Augustus carefully put a wisp of black smoke into a secret glass bottle. After completely sealing up the black smoke, Augustus activated the detection equipment beside him and saw that there was nothing abnormal in the detection results, so he let out a long breath of relief. Boom boom boom. At this moment, there was a knock on the door behind him. Augustus, who heard the sound, took out his broken gold pocket watch, looked at the time, and sighed. Always on time. With that said, he left the workbench and slowly opened the door. With the sound of mechanical rotation, the special metal door was slowly pulled open. Professor Snape was wearing a brand new black robe and stood up right outside the door. When he saw Augustus, Professor Snape greeted him calmly. "Good evening, Mr. Dumbledore. I didn't expect you to come to me to arrange tasks so soon, especially after you told Harry about that. How long has it been since she talked to me?" "Oh, let me think. It's been 20 hours. Seeing the resentful expression on Professor Snape's face, Augustus could only smile awkwardly, then muttered in a low voice, "You didn't do that when the other party kissed you. Why didn't you stop me at that time? As an elder, it really is." Humph. Facing Augustus' ridicule, Professor Snape didn't bother to quarrel with him, snorted and walked sideways into the laboratory. Looking at the dazzling array of equipment in the laboratory, as well as the neatly arranged various alchemy items, Professor Snape nodded in satisfaction. Then he said softly without looking back, "As for my reward, you must know that doing this for you will be a great loss to my personal reputation, although there is a high probability that other people will not know what I have done. But you also have to admit that I did this at a risk, so please give me what I deserve." Hearing that the other party started to ask for payment, Augustus's expectation of getting away with it was also shattered, so he had to stand in a corner of his workbench. He took out a very elegant men's leather bag, put it in front of Professor Snape, and then explained, "This is my new portable leather bag for men. Its appearance is only 1/5 of the size of a women's satchel, but the interior space is basically the same. And the various metals used above are purified with alchemy magic, and they cleverly form a stable magic matrix. This also makes the internal space more stable, and the time storage does not have to worry about the risk of magic failure. All the rewards you want are in it, the original set of alchemy equipment, and 6 basic units of various magical animal materials. You don't have to go to Hagrid every day anymore. The little things he collected are basically sold to me. He is now happily playing with his tribe of centaurs. How did he come here? To form a powerful army of fantastic animals, and then kick Voldemort's ass hard." After listening to all the other parties' explanations, Professor Snape took the man's leather bag expressionlessly, and then continued to look at the things that were continuously refined in the alchemy instrument, said calmly, "What exactly is the mission? You must know that I basically don't have much connection with Voldemort. All the previous contact methods and contact networks, basically, all of them have been instigated by you. Most of the people who supported Voldemort in the past were pure blood families. Now they are perishing and rebelling. The only ones left are people with abnormal brains like Bella. To be honest, I don't know what you want to use him for, but there is a high probability that he will not be able to accomplish anything." After listening to Professor Snape's narration, Augustus was not in a hurry to give the task, but waved his hand lightly and brought 2 bottles of stools and a small table with magic. After setting up the stool and the small table, he took out a bottle of fine red wine from under the workbench, filled a glass for each of them, then sat down and said slowly, while shaking the red wine, "Of course he is going to harm the Muggle world. It is also time to let some people know the existence of the wizarding world, if we still have time. People in the Muggle world now obtain information, no matter what, mainly through news broadcasts and television. These things are in the hands of capital led by the media. As long as these things are not mastered by everyone, then there is room for manipulation, and they can be used to achieve their own goals." Hearing that the other party was going to involve the Muggle world, Professor Snape turned around, pulled out his chair, and sat down, after thinking for a while, and asked softly across the glass of red wine, "Are you sure the time is right now? Know that once this decision is made, there will be no chance to go back on it. As you said, even if you use magic, you will leave traces. Once anything is exposed, no matter how beautiful the follow-up work is, it will definitely leave traces that can be found. Of course I'm not making any decisions for you. I just want to tell you that you must think through all the details of this kind of thing." Hearing Professor Snape's sincere persuasion, Augustus nodded his approval, but he still spoke seriously. "Any decision I make, I have thought about the details, so I can think about it. Voldemort is a madman who does things without thinking about the consequences. He has reached a desperate situation now. With the power of the so-called high-ranking officials he colluded with, he has no influence on the current British wizarding world. At the same time, Professor, you should be able to see that in that remote mountain village in Bulgaria, an entire town was killed by Voldemort. But this does not attract anyone's attention. What does this mean? No matter how much we emphasize that all people are equal, it is the difference in region and identity which will still cause the value of their lives to appear not so equal in many cases. So we need to put a little pressure on the Muggles so that we can gain more benefits for us in the follow-up exchanges. But as the leaders of the future wizarding community, we certainly cannot be involved in any dirty killings. So we need a killer, a lunatic, a bastard who is sacrificed at any time and no one feels sorry for him. I think for this sake, you should know that no one is more suitable than him, Mr. Tom Riddle, a complete and self-righteous trash who has been abandoned by everyone. Chapter 154, the drama everyone wants to see. After Augustus's explanations were all over, Professor Snape was still silent there, although he had already read many classic masterpieces of the Muggle world at the fastest speed. However, he still seemed to lack a lot of understanding of the deepest operating logic of the Muggle world, but out of trust in the other party, Professor Snape still nodded and said softly, "Then what should I do? If it involves the Muggle world, I don't think I can help you too much. After all, I don't have any official status. The Minister of the British Ministry of Magic has contacted some people in the British government. But as you know, the current Minister of Magic has become Voldemort's puppet and even Professor Snape couldn't find an adjective for that parasitic state. Parasitized host. I think you mean to say this, Professor, Mr. Cornelius Fudge, is a stupid idiot, and he could have safely stepped down from office. Then under our protection, he quietly lived a rich life, but he chose to hold on to the power in his hand. In any game of power, losers are not allowed. The losers will only become the nourishment of the winners, and there will be no dregs left after being eaten." Seeing Professor Snape's speechless state, Augustus responded calmly. Faced with this description from Augustus, Professor Snape didn't say anything, just nodded calmly, and then looked at the other party waiting for the other party to assign tasks. Relations with the Muggle world government, and control of their media, will be handed over to Barty Crouch Sr. and Mr. Lucius Malfoy. As I promised you, as long as the Muggle world is involved, I will definitely consider all the details. And we have already made preparations. Before you find out, the major media in the UK, such as the BBC, have already been invested by us. Although we can't directly control these agencies, I don't think it's a big problem to change some minor reports. Old Mr. Barty Crouch is nominally still the director of the Department of Magical Enforcement of the Ministry of Magic. This is his official identity, and he will wait for the authorization of the International Federation of Wizards held in Paris, France. 1 month later, we can start our comprehensive plan in an official capacity, and the planning process is not too long, only less than 4 months. Facing the other party's arrangement, Professor Snape agreed, but he was still very puzzled, because he still couldn't understand what he came here for. So he asked seriously, "Then since my mission is not in the Muggle world, it must involve Voldemort again, and the other party's current mental state has already appeared problematic. As you expected, except for some wizards who have already established a relationship with us, or secretly communicated with Lucius and the others. Those wizards under the rule of the Ministry of Magic have lived a life like death, especially those who are half-blood or Muggle born. In this short period of less than a month, the other party has secretly executed about 50 people, and they have been suppressing this matter. I think in a few days the Daily Prophet and the Quibbler will be competing to report this matter. As for the counterattack against them, and the so-called mission that Voldemort entrusted to me, it was just a scam or a trap. I really can't understand why you have to contact him again." Facing Professor Snape's question, Augustus did not answer, but bought himself a glass of red wine, and drank the bright red liquid in one gulp. Feeling the burning temperature of the surrounding magical flames, listening to the gurgling sound of the alchemy potion, he was silent for a while before speaking slowly. "Because these are not enough, you should have seen the reaction of those students when they saw the newspaper. They were all mourning the death of the Auror, but they didn't care about the other wizards in the dock at all. Why? That's because the images give them the feeling of a simple binary, the evil Death Eater killing the righteous Auror. Under our protection, they are still living a carefree and prosperous life. They cannot understand the helplessness of ordinary people, and they cannot understand that under absolute violence, the silent majority will always be. Tomorrow's report will definitely not cause too much disturbance. They will only spurn Voldemort again, but they cannot understand the feelings of those people when they died. The death of one person is a tragedy, but the death of many people is just a number. We need a more direct feeling. Simply direct enough to shock everyone, and that's the way the photo was taken. The simple binary, good versus evil." These words made Professor Snape completely silent. He was indeed carefully observing the students' state, because he was afraid that his students would show extreme mentality out of the worship of power. However, he did not observe that those people regretted the loss of their personal lives, but ignored the collective tragedy. After thinking about it, Professor Snape agreed with Augustus' point of view, and also thought that tomorrow's report might not resonate with too many people. In order to avoid the death of more people and the tragic death of more silent people, Professor Snape asked calmly, "Then what should I do? Although I don't want to deny that you are doing this, it seems a bit too heartless. When they die, or witness the death of their favorite person, the pain is indescribable." Hearing these words, Augustus couldn't help but look at Professor Snape, then said calmly, shaking his wine glass, "Because you've experienced it before, right? The person you love the most dies in your arms. It's probably only you who have experienced that feeling. Don't worry, I won't let your salvation come too late. This plan will only last for 4 months, and it will be just like you said. You have to admit that those who died had a mentality problem. There were so many opportunities in front of them, but they were unwilling to grasp them. Sometimes it's like this. Maybe it's a step too late, but what you get is lost forever." After saying this, Augustus drank the red wine in the glass, then stood up and put the sealed glass bottle in front of Professor Snape. "You are not mistaken. The ray of soul inside belongs to Mr. Tom Reed. You just need to bring this bottle to him. The memory in the bottle governs the soul, and he will send a message to Voldemort. That is, he has 2 Horcruxes that I have found, Ravenclaw's crown and Hufflepuff's golden cup. His soul may be destroyed by me at any time. If you want, restore your strength as soon as possible. Find more bastards who are in the same rank as him, and come to Hogwarts Castle to ask Dumbledore for it." Assault on Hogwarts Castle, the contest between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the new era. Simple binary confrontation, the battle that everyone wants to see. This is the story that can resonate with people, and it is also a scene that can be remembered fresh. After speaking, Augustus stretched his waist and yawned, then turned and walked towards the door of the laboratory. He had worked for almost 10 hours and needed a good rest. Augustus, who opened the door of the laboratory, seemed to have thought of something at this moment, turned his head to look at Professor Snape, who was still sitting there, and said softly, "Drink that glass of wine, Professor. This is Mrs. Potter's new wine. Although it tastes a bit bitter, I have to say that the feelings in it are sincere." After finishing speaking, he opened the door and left, leaving only Professor Snape in that luxurious laboratory, looking at the glass of red wine in front of him, thinking about something constantly. And the soul in the secret glass bottle is still fluttering, trying to open the bottle's shackles. Chapter 155, The Numb Victim. The time has come to March, and this is a good time for everyone to go out in the spring, even though there is no tradition of spring outings in the wizarding world. But in this season, when the grass grows, and the warbler flies, and all things recover, the good mood brought by the warmer weather will still make many wizards hold various activities. For example, make a good meal at home, live a small 2-person world with your wife, or start a big wave of spring promotions to earn a little capital for your future life. However, at this special time, the entire British wizarding world is still lifeless, and it is even said that the situation is much worse than the previous few months. The Minister of Magic, Mr. Cornelius Fudge, suddenly changed his temperament for unknown reasons, often yelled all kinds of strange things, and refuted all accusations. Those who were more determined towards it adopted very cruel methods. In just 1 month, more than 50 wizards had died under the tyranny of the opponent. Most of them were Muggle-born or mixed-blood wizards. They were arrested in Azkaban for various reasons, and then all died mysteriously. Even the corpses were not allowed to be taken away by the family members, and the family members of some Muggle wizards were also unnecessarily involved. The cases of mysterious disappearances in London were also rising exponentially. More and more people began to worry about the safety of the wizarding world, fearing that bad luck would befall them, and fearing that without any preparation, the wizarding world would be exposed to all muggles in advance. You are back. Have you completed the task I entrusted to you? I believe that such a small amount of purchase should be very easy for you. If you have bought something, put the part you need to hand in next to you. If you haven't completed the task, please consciously leave the team and stand aside. In the former apparition registration department, Umbridge the Pink Toad stood there, with that iconic smirk on his face, looking at the wizards queuing up one by one, and said softly. She seemed to be trying to calm down her tone as much as possible, but in the ears of these poor people, it was undoubtedly the scream of a ghost. They witnessed with their own eyes how many of their compatriots died painfully and slowly under the torture of that lunatic minister. The process of the life being stripped from the body is simply hard to see directly. Those people were thrown into Azkaban after they had been tortured until they had only one breath left. And the current Azkaban is more like a prison of death. I heard some rumors that the British Ministry of Magic and the Dementor population have reached an agreement of intent. They allowed those monsters to absorb unscrupulously the happy memories of those who were dying, and some wizards who still had illusions when they visited Azkaban. What I saw was a more desperate scene. My relatives were chained there, like broilers imprisoned in a pen. They, who were already pale and emaciated and about to die, were made into rows of big meals, waiting in line for the Dementors to absorb their happy memories. Seeing those relatives with yellow and emaciated faces, and the traces of blood and tears on their faces, many people who witnessed this desperate scene were going crazy, and some impulsive people clashed with the guards. But the result can be imagined. Those monsters without emotions had another delicious meal at night. Clerk John, who was hiding among the crowd, was looking at this group of numb people with grief and anger. Through the coin that Professor Snape gave him before, he successfully matched with Augustus and others' relationship. That's why he didn't leave here to work in the Muggle world. As a young man with a real conscience, he didn't want to give up on his nominal compatriots. He has saved many people. With his help, at least more than 100 wizards have escaped from the control of these people, but the oppression has become more and more serious. The work of saving these people by myself has become even more difficult. Many Muggle wizards who have been oppressed and tortured would rather live a life that is not as good as pigs and dogs here, and they are not willing to follow themselves to escape the suffering. They are afraid of the means of punishment of the other party. They have witnessed the cruelest torture in the world, and they are afraid that that torture will happen to them. Some people even want to take the opportunity to report themselves, or those compatriots who want to escape, just to make their lives a little better, such as having a decent piece of bread at dinner. Miss Anne, this is the first time you haven't completed the task. Look at what you bought. I really can't understand why you always complete such a simple task so badly. While Clerk John was still distressed, Umbridge, standing at the front of the line, reprimanded a thin lady with an extremely strange expression. She forcibly snatched the black plastic bag tightly held in the opponent's hand, and then poured out the contents. A few potatoes and some carrots that looked like they were picked up were poured on the hard marble floor with exquisite and luxurious carving patterns. It formed a very weird picture with the potatoes with dirt and some tiny finger-like carrots. And the thin lady named Annie quickly knelt down on the ground, carefully picked up the potatoes and carrots, and wiped the dirt on them. Then he said with tears in his eyes, I really can't afford any more money. Originally, due to the recent difficult situation, my salary have shrunk in a large area. Especially since September this year, I have lost my job, my savings have basically bottomed out, and I still have a mother to support. I really have no choice. When Miss Annie said this, she was choked up so hard that she couldn't help herself. Many of her words were hard to hear, and she could only guess through the sentences before and after. Facing such a poor lady, especially her thin body, it can be seen that it is caused by long-term malnutrition. But that fat pink toad seemed to have no mercy at all, as she pulled up Miss Annie, who was sitting on the ground, with a face full of disgust, but forcefully snatched the potatoes and carrots. He touched the other person's face and said softly, oh my dear, I want to help you so much, but you also know the rules. I have to punish you. Don't worry, just stay in Azkaban for a week. Out of humanitarian considerations, it might be difficult for your mother to survive without your help, so send her to Azkaban as well. While the other party was saying these words, two law enforcement officers in black cloaks had already set up the crying Miss Annie, directly cast a deaf-mute spell on the other party, and then wanted to forcibly drag the other party away. But at this moment, two rapid silver grey magic rays shot out from the end of the crowd. Just as the two law enforcement officers were about to react, they were hit by the two magical rays of light, and the two of them fell to the ground in an instant and couldn't sleep. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 156, A Lesson from the Pink Toad. This sudden situation shifted everyone's attention to the rear of the team, and Clark John, who was in the middle of the crowd, had already seen who was doing it. After seeing that it was Professor Snape coming, Clark John immediately understood that this was a very good opportunity, and he sold the bag of flour he bought today. He secretly cut it open with the knife in his sleeve, and before everyone's attention left Professor Snape, he threw the flour with the cut into the sky. The white powder immediately scattered in the sky. Thick white smoke covered everyone's vision, and Clark John took the opportunity to get away from the crowd. He came to the lady's side at an extremely fast speed, grabbed the other's arm, and whispered in the other's ear, "Don't worry, I'm the John Brown who told you to help you escape. Now someone is here to make trouble, and I will ask your mother to move out together where I live. Now you can leave with me. If you don't leave here now, neither you nor your mother will lose this only chance to live." Hearing this, Miss Anna nodded lightly, and then clasped Clark John's arm tightly with both hands. Clark John, who received an affirmative answer, planned to take the other party out of here immediately, but when he stood up, he didn't know whether it was a coincidence or the other party had done too many bad things and was punished. The cut flour sack was placed on Umbridge's head by a very coincidence, and the fat head of the other party was caught by the gap in the flour sack. She was dancing around and wanted to take the flour bag off her head, and saw this shameful woman who was usually pretending to be a tiger, and her morals were extremely degraded. Clark John could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. Through the flour bag, he went up and slapped the opponent several times, and then kicked the opponent's fat body down with a Spartan kick. Umbridge, who was wearing the iconic pink dress, was kicked straight by the sudden kick, and his fat body rolled several times on the ground. And because of the skirt, during the process of rolling on the ground, it was inevitable that she would lose her nakedness. Black, you want to seduce someone at such an age? What a disgusting toad. After witnessing the hard-to-look scene, Clark John couldn't help complaining. Then, with Miss Anna's surprised expression on her face, she spat at the other party's exposed skin, and then turned around and left with Miss Anna. When he left, he happened to see Professor Snape standing there calmly, and the other party was gently waving his wand. It seemed that the flour sack was not a coincidence. After making eye contact with the other party, Clark John took Miss Anna and left this place of right and wrong through the magic coin in his hand. After confirming that the two had left, Professor Snape gently swung his wand upwards, accompanied by this movement. The dust that permeated the small space immediately disappeared without a trace, and everyone present gradually saw clearly. But for the vast majority of people, what they see in front of them is not a beautiful picture, and it can even be said with hot eyes. "I'm looking for Mr. Voldemort. As for your lady, I think you should pay attention to your appearance. For a person of your age, it should be steady and dignified, not so disrespectful as it is now. It's only March. It's not time to wear a bathing suit." Just when everyone was regretting the scene before them, Professor Snape walked slowly towards Umbridge, speaking calmly as he walked. And it was only at this moment that Umbridge finally broke free from the flour sack on her head. After regaining her vision, she immediately noticed her poor posture. She quickly stood up and put down the skirt again. Because her face was covered with flour, her face was pale and terrifying at the moment, like a ghost in a nation horror movie, staring at everyone present with anger. Professor Snape didn't care about the glare of the lady in front of him. He still repeated it calmly. "I need to see Mr. Voldemort immediately, or, to put it more clearly, I need to see Mr. Tom Riddle." The calm words were as cold as a lake in winter, but in the ears of these poor wizards, they sounded like deafening bells. "I remember that the master didn't summon you, you shameful traitor. If you didn't have the protection of the master, we would have killed you," snapped. Umbridge hadn't finished his sentence yet when the other party looked at Professor Snape. He was full of contempt and deep anger. Although she is not a high-level wizard, she can also feel the flour bag covered her head, and it must not be caused by any coincidence. But what she never expected was that the other party didn't even let him finish his sentence and slapped herself directly. And why the slap hurts so much? Obviously only the left cheek was hit. Why the right cheek also feels hot? I don't want to hear you, a toad, making noise here. The person I want to meet is called Voldemort, or Mr. Tom Riddle. You just need to tell me where he is. Of course, if you are not too tired, you can also show me the way. Don't worry, what I want to do is definitely more important than you bullying some people here who are unable to resist or are threatened by you. Professor Snape repeated his request again. The tone was still so flat, and the cloud was still so calm. But this series of humiliation made Umbridge in front of her lose her mind a little bit. She even pointed a finger at Professor Snape's nose and shouted loudly, "Master will definitely kill you, including the so-called Augustus Dumbledore behind you, let me tell you." Snapped. Another resounding slap. This time Professor Snape slapped the opponent on the right cheek. After slapping the opponent, Professor Snape took out a handkerchief from his jacket pocket and wiped his own face left hand. Then he threw the handkerchief on the opponent's face and said flatly, "Wipe your face well, don't you know that you look scary now? And I don't want to know what Voldemort has plans. At the same time, I would also like to advise you. You said too many unnecessary words, and you don't know how to die. There are more than one or two people who want to kill you now." After finishing speaking, Professor Snape walked sideways behind Umbridge because he sensed the familiar stench. But during the walking process, Professor Snape still said calmly, "If you actually hate your current life, you must dare to change it. Compared with regretting because you did something wrong, doing nothing will only make people feel sad and shameful." Chapter 157 The Stinky Barty Crouch Jr. Walking on the road leading to the No. Council Hall, Professor Snape always felt a little strange, although he himself hadn't been here too many times. However, as one of the most trusted people of Augustus, Professor Snape still came here many times to have secret discussions with some so-called senior officials. Relying on his excellent memory, Professor Snape was % sure that the Ministry of Magic now is absolutely different from before. It's not those black-robed law enforcement officers who are constantly patrolling, nor are they those ferocious black wizards who don't seem to be serious at first glance. It's the atmosphere here. Although there are no decorations of skeletons or other horror element, there is always a strange feeling. This feeling is also very simple to explain, that is, it is too dark. Could it be that the entire Ministry of Magic is so poor that it can't even afford lighting equipment? On this narrow passage, Professor Snape hardly saw anything for lighting. The entire passage was shrouded in pitch blackness. Professor Snape could only use the illuminating charm while slowly moving forward. As the stench became stronger and stronger, Professor Snape was sure that he was getting closer to the person he wanted to see. After pushing open a luxurious metal door, Professor Snape came to the most luxurious Parliament Hall in the entire Ministry of Magic. The Parliament Hall is composed of 3 floors. The bottom floor is the rostrum, plus a circle of luxurious single seats. The rostrum is located in the center of the entire Parliament Hall, and the luxurious single seats are spread out around it, and the rostrum is facing the gate of the Parliament. The second level should be the position of the next level councillors. Their seats no longer have luxurious decorations, but simple single seats, and they sit on very simple solid wood chairs. The top floor should be where the lowest level councillors sit, and their seats are no longer individual seats, but rows of folding stools. The entire Parliament Hall is extremely high, with a full height of 6 floors. At the same time, the ceiling also adopts a special dome structure, and the circular dome is painted with exquisite murals. And those murals are old but still colorful, and under the blessing of magic and alchemy, they still silently tell the glorious history of the British Ministry of Magic. Right above the seats on the 3rd floor, there is a circle of magic light bulbs for lighting, but for some unknown reason, all of these light bulbs were extinguished. Only the fluorescent materials used on the murals are left behind, and the little glimmers emitted add a touch of strangeness to the dim environment. And the imaginary councillors had long since disappeared, and there were only a few people empty in this majestic building with a huge space. They were Mr. Cornelius Fudge behind the rostrum, and several law enforcement officers in black robes scattered around him. Most of them were very familiar to Professor Snape, and many of them could be called his colleagues before. Among them, the two with the most unique shapes are Barty Crouch Jr., who are respectively located on the left hand of Mr. Cornelius Fudge. At this moment, his appearance was still very handsome, but his body seemed to have suffered some trauma, especially his back should have been seriously injured, because Professor Snape observed that the other party was a little hunched. The lady at the right hand of Mr. Cornelius Fudge is the now notorious Bella Lestrange. This lady is also heavily in debt now. According to the information that Professor Snape has, at least half of the more than wizards who were executed were done by this crazy woman herself. But now the other party was looking at him madly, with disdain and ridicule in his eyes, but also a little surprise. Severus, I probably haven't told you what to do. Your mission is to stay by your master's side. Although I know that you are no longer loyal to me, I still hope that you can handle things well. Otherwise you will meet the wrath of the Dark Lord. Mr. Cornelius Fudge on the rostrum spoke first. His voice was low and hoarse, although Mr. Fudge's voice could still be heard. But if you distinguish carefully, there seems to be another person's voice hidden under the surface voice. Facing Mr. Fudge's questioning on the rostrum, Professor Snape did not answer. He cast his eyes on the center of the Parliament Hall. It is usually where the defendant sits. In the normal work of the Ministry of Magic in the past, this is usually the place where the inauguration ceremony of the new Minister of Magic is held. Other than that, the only time it would work here was on the last working day of Christmas every year, when all members of the Wizengamot Council would check the list of wizards to be executed here. All regular councillors, lifetime councillors and reserve councillors must attend the most important trial of the year, to demonstrate the Ministry of Magic's restraint on public power. But the person sitting in the defendant's seat is just a thin young man, and the other party seems to have been treated very cruelly. Now he just leaned back on the chair, staring at the sky with inhalation but not exhalation, leaving only a dull look in his eyes. It seems that you still need to use this despicable method to cover up your own weakness. The life of that small town person still cannot compensate your broken soul. Are you sure you can live to the day when you meet Augustus face to face? You have to know that the other party is still a child, and he is growing every day. He is still 4 full years away from becoming an adult. I really can't imagine what kind of state you will use to face the adult Augustus on that day. After seeing that the man in the defendant's seat was almost impossible to be rescued, Professor Snape mocked without raising his eyes. This ridicule made the men in black immediately excited, and the most representative of them were Barty Crouch Jr. and Bella's lackeys. Barty Crouch Jr. dragged his injured back, still showing his iconic crazy smile, seeing that this was the professor sternly yelling, "You are a coward who betrayed your master. You just borrowed the power of the so-called Dumbledore to resurrect a puppet who no longer loves you. For a woman who has married someone else, who is that person he married? Oh, or your deadly enemy. You said you." Just when the other party wanted to continue to stink, Professor Snape raised his head expressionlessly and glanced at the mocking expression on the other party's face. Without hesitation, he took out his wand, aimed at Barty Crouch Jr. and shouted loudly, "Avada Kedavra, Avada Kedavra." Chapter 158. A simple announcement. A deathly green ray shot out from the top of the wand. When the ray shot out, there was a huge explosion, like an aerial bomb fired from a naval gun. The airwave generated during the launch even stirred up a circle of smoke and dust in front of Professor Snape, and the speed of that ray of light was also extremely fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, he had already flown in front of Barty Crouch Jr. before the mocking expression on the opponent's face had time to change. The green light had already illuminated the still handsome face of the opponent, and at this moment, Voldemort, who was on the rostrum, finally made a move. Little Barty Crouch's body seemed to be pushed heavily by something, and his body flew straight upside down, as if hit by a heavy truck. And the green light rubbed against the corner of the opponent's clothes, and with that unstoppable momentum, it hit the wall behind Barty Crouch Jr. The moment it hit the wall, there was a violent explosion at the hit site, and the powerful shock wave blew the luxurious stools around. Smoke and dust permeated this luxurious hall, among which Voldemort and Bella, who were closest, were not affected too much, because of Voldemort's magic. The black-robed wizards standing in other corners were not so lucky. They fell to the ground one by the shockwave, and because they were wearing long robes, many of them couldn't even stand up when they were in a hurry. After half a minute, the smoke and dust gradually dissipated, and when the sight of Voldemort, Bella and others became clear again, Professor Snape was still standing there, and he took out a brand new handkerchief from his pocket very gracefully. Wiping off the dust on his body, he wiped his wand, and carefully put it back. Seeing this scene, the black-robed wizards headed by Bella immediately formed a battle formation, and they surrounded Professor Snape again in a circle. Stop. Just when the tense atmosphere reached its peak, Voldemort on the rostrum let out a loud roar. This time, he was not imitating Mr. Cornelius Fudge's voice, but directly using his own original voice. The anger in this roar has reached its peak, and the shouting is also very loud, blowing up the smoke and dust that had finally dissipated. Severus, forgive that child's rudeness. He has become a little out of order because of his father's teaching problems. You used to know them too, and you knew how good they were before. You should understand what we want. Magic blooms only on a few people. We are inherently nobler than those people, and we are born to have dominion over them. After yelling, Voldemort first dragged Barty Crouch Jr., whose life and death were unknown, to his side by levitation. After seeing that the opponent was not completely dead, he directly threw the opponent to the ground and fell from midair to the hard floor again. I believe that Mr. Barty Crouch's injured back must be very uncomfortable at the moment. After finishing all this and seeing Bella and the others obey their orders, they carefully stepped aside. Voldemort started his own signature words again, wanting to use language to recruit himself, the most capable former subordinate. However, in the face of this old-fashioned language offensive, Professor Snape was not disturbed. Of course, he would not be naive to think that muggles and wizards could get along on an equal footing. He also absolutely believed that the freedom advocated by Augustus must also be dominated by the wizarding group. He also believed that one day the magical world would be exposed to the real world, and there would always be conflicts between the two races. But what he would never believe now, with Voldemort's style and means of doing things, it is absolutely impossible to achieve the result he promised. Violence is a way to solve problems, but it is only a way. It can neither be completely abandoned, nor can it be used as the only way. The other party's current approach simply cannot achieve the integration of the entire wizarding community, and then negotiate with muggles who are hundreds of times larger than themselves. This approach of the other party will only lead to further splitting of the wizarding group, and in the end, amidst constant internal friction and division, the wizarding group will surely perish completely. But now Professor Snape was not interested in giving him another ideological and political lesson, so he directly took out the special bottle from his pocket, throwing it gently to Voldemort on the rostrum, then said softly, "I don't need to explain what's in it. If you can't even tell this, then I advise you to go back to where you should stay as soon as possible. I'm here simply to convey a message to you. That is, the other party has mastered the method of extracting your soul without damaging the Horcrux itself. At the same time, the other party also bears some pressure. After all, his grandfather has left Hogwarts, and he is now the only savior that the entire British wizarding world can expect. Believe his purpose of doing this. You can also understand. As for how to judge, it is up to you." After listening to Professor Snape's explanation, Voldemort on the stage immediately manipulated Mr. Cornelius Fudge's body, brought the bottle in front of his eyes, and observed it carefully. When he saw the plume of black smoke in the bottle, Voldemort admitted that he felt scared for the first time. This is undoubtedly a strand of his soul stored in the Horcrux, and it is only a fragment of soul. But how was this fragment of soul stripped out? How it was stripped from the Horcrux without him being aware of it? Voldemort now feels that his mind is very messed up. They thought they had seen clearly all of Augustus' methods through the observation of the remnant soul arranged on the red-haired kid brother. He saw the confrontation between the opponent and his so-called younger brother, and also saw the opponent's various magical methods. But he never felt afraid, as the strongest genius in Slytherin and even the entire Hogwarts for 100 years. For his talent, Voldemort did not have the slightest doubt. He believed that, as long as he gave himself time, he would be able to deduce all the magic used by the opponent. The means that the other party has now are just to increase the chips for the Dark Lord's future rule. But the moment he saw this bottle, Voldemort's mind began to be in constant confusion, and he hadn't experienced the feeling of approaching death for a long time. There is only one thought in his mind now, which is to go to Hogwarts as soon as possible and snatch his Horcrux from that little Dumbledore. His life is being threatened, and his dream of immortality is being destroyed step by step. However, compared to Voldemort, who was constantly thinking on the stage, Professor Snape seemed unusually calm. He tidied up his clothes that were blown up by the shockwave, said slowly, "It's almost a month before the United Wizards Conference in Paris. I think you should be able to guess the first thing the other party does when they are authorized. By the way, I would like to emphasize again that there is no need to comment on my behavior. It is just a simple transaction between us, and the transaction is still valid." After speaking, along with a burst of space distortion, Professor Snape disappeared into the Parliament Hall. At the same time, the poor man sitting in the dock and being tortured disappeared together. Chapter 159 Students with Different Talents. Miss Granger's movements are a little lighter. We are concocting potions and not cooking, and even if you look like cooking ingredients, the things you make probably won't be very tasty. When he saw Hermione holding a horse spoon and constantly stirring in the potion cauldron, Augustus couldn't bear it anymore and reminded her carefully beside her. And in the process of reminding, Augustus inadvertently glanced at the lump of potion in the crucible with the corner of his eye. Looking at the babble-like thing that was constantly bubbling due to heating, Augustus left sideways directly under the suspicious eyes of the other party so that he could have a normal lunch at noon. It was an ordinary Wednesday in April. Ever since his two fathers went on their honeymoon, the position of Professor of Defense Against Magic, nominally held by Professor Andrus, had been vacant. Originally, according to Dumbledore's intention, this position will be held by Professor Remus Lupin, but it is well known that a certain Slytherin head who does not want to be named has always been morbidly obsessed with this professorship. So on the first day of Professor Lupin, Professor Snape broke into the other party's classroom without any accident. He wanted to get the position he had been fighting for a long time through a duel. Augustus remembered that the classroom was full of gunpowder, and Sirius Black was still discussing countermeasures with his good friends. It seems that he wants to pass a duel to kill this old bat who has long disliked him and got in his way. Just when the war was about to break out, Mrs. Porter rushed to the scene with Professor McGonagall, and the two ladies stopped this barbaric act. At the same time, all the professors present were brought to the vice principal's office. Draco's informant inquired about the details. At that time, all the professors, including Mrs. Potter, stood neatly in front of Professor McGonagall's desk, bowing their heads, listening to Professor McGonagall's constant reprimand. Later, in order to avoid friction, and also out of trust in Professor Snape's ability, Professor McGonagall included the mischievous and difficult to discipline senior students into the scope of Professor Snape's teaching, to cope with rising tensions, and prepare for a complex future. This decision immediately caused grief among the students in the 4th grade and above, and they strongly protested against the other party's behavior that did not comply with the rules. So under the strong protest of these students, the 3rd year students were also included in Professor Snape's teaching scope. Professor Lupin can only undertake the work of teaching defense against the dark arts in the 1st and 2nd grades, and can only help Professor McGonagall organize files and do some clerical work at other times. As Professor Snape's time became tight, Augustus, the most advanced student, took up the post of Professor of Potions for the 3rd to 7th grade students temporarily. Originally, the best candidate for this position was Mrs. Potter, but this year Augustus made a large-scale reform of potion science. A lot of equipment used in Muggle world chemistry teaching has been introduced, such as a more stable electromagnetic cooker electronic scale, and several advanced electron microscopes and distillation equipment. This made it difficult for Mrs. Potter, who had been away from the Muggle world for too long, to be familiar with so many new equipment immediately, so she could only continue to assume the position of Assistant Professor of Potions. However, he did not hold this position for too long. After only 1 week, Professor Snape took Porter to him on the grounds that he could explain the new content of potions to the other party alone, and at the same time, the teaching of defense against the dark arts was heavy and needed assistance. The lady transferred to her side. Poor Augustus, he can only assume the position of potions professor by himself. During the 1-month period, Augustus also summed up the strengths and weaknesses of many students. For example, Miss Hall and Draco. This group is basically the legendary genius and idiot, and Miss Hall is responsible for all the preparation of potions and answering questions. Draco handed over the ingredients for the potion that the other party wanted, and at the same time, with malicious intentions, took out a handkerchief from time to wipe the sweat off the other party's head. And Simo and Neville are the legendary duo of blasting geniuses. At first, Augustus thought that there was no such peculiar physique in the world. The reason why the other party is like this is because the nature of the magic power in the body is too violent, and the previous potion brewing is too extensive. But after a month of nightmare-like torture, Augustus also had to admit that there are things in the world that can neither be explained by science nor by magic. Among the potions that the two of them had handled, there wasn't a single one that didn't explode. The only difference was that the color of the flame produced during the explosion might be different. For the safety of others, and at the same time, to develop a more powerful explosive potion, Augustus was in the potion science classroom. An explosion-proof room was specially arranged for the two of them, so that they could concentrate on the more powerful blasting potion, and collect more samples. Let's explain to myself why after the explosion, the two of them can always leave a batch of qualified potions in their crucible. This phenomenon that is completely inconsistent with the conservation of energy and mass can be said to surpass magic, and is already called a miracle. It seems that in this world, the strongest wizards have never been themselves and Voldemort, but these two creators who can create matter out of thin air. Under Hermione's puzzled eyes, Augustus quickly walked away from the other party, in case the other party became angry, and made some gaffes. Hermione is also a very peculiar member of this classroom. She did not co-produce in pairs like everyone else. Instead, she sat alone, and the reason was very simple. Her previous partner was her best friend, Miss Daphne. The two of them looked very much like Harley and Draco before, and Miss Daphne was the most outstanding potion student besides Holly. For all the homework the two had done before, Hermione handed each other materials and tools, and Daphne was in charge of cooking and writing the thesis. But just last week, Hermione begged Daphne to make a potion out of her strong self-esteem as a schoolmaster. With Daphne's careful assistance, Hermione did make a wave of decent potions, but sadly, they were very simple pleasure potions. Out of the happiness of her own success and her gratitude to her best friend, Hermione gave Daphne the share of what I want, and under her expectant eyes, Daphne drank the bottle of potion face to face. As for the effect, of course it is very remarkable. The other party is still sleeping in the hospital. When it was sent to the infirmary, even Professor Snape was amazed. He was still lamenting how the little third-year student could brew such a high-level sleeping potion that even he couldn't easily brew. Chapter 160 The Unexpected Letter. Just as Augustus walked beside the students, he corrected some Slytherin students' mistakes in details, and stopped some Gryffindor students from using the induction cooker to cook food. Only then did Augustus slowly return to the podium, watching the sunset gradually setting outside the window, and listening to the constant blasting sound from the explosion-proof room. What a comfortable life, hey. I now understand why Papa Grindelwald wants to retire. A life without hard work is really comfortable, and moving the classroom to the top floor of Hogwarts is really an extremely wise decision. Otherwise I can only spend that extremely boring time looking at those weird potion ingredients. Dang dang dang. Just when Augustus was lying on the podium with his head sideways, looking at the sunset, and muttering to himself, he was about to fall asleep with his head down. A sudden sound of glass knocking reached Augustus' ears. Augustus raised his head when he heard the sound, and saw an extremely spectacular scene. Under the leadership of an owl, a group of owls flew towards Hogwarts Castle covering the sky and the sun. Against the backdrop of the setting sun, they flew towards the castle like a huge dark cloud covering the sky and the sun. And the owl that takes the lead looks very strange. It is named Lily, the owl of Professor Snape. The reason why it looks strange is because his appearance has changed unexpectedly. He looked like the old Professor Snape before, with two slender feathers, just like Professor Snape's long greasy hair before, hanging on both sides of his forehead, making this owl look abnormally greasy. But now its appearance has undergone a huge change. The two direlings stretched back miraculously, and then interweaved together in a miraculous way, like a small braid behind the head. At the same time, the temperament has also become elegant, and the appearance of the whole owl has risen to a high level. This change is accompanied by the change of Professor Snape's appearance. When he saw the owl's new shape for the first time, Augustus thought it was the magic cast by the internal professor. Instead, through his own detection, that there was no magical aura on the other party, he asked Professor Snape himself, and Professor Snape also said he had no knowledge. Augustus can only sigh that there are many unsolved mysteries in the wizarding world. While Augustus was still observing the new shape of the owl, the classroom was already noisy. After all, many people had never seen it before. So many owls were dispatched at the same time, and the blackness seemed a little scary. Silence. Pay attention to your behavior. At this moment, Draco immediately demonstrated his ability as the vice president of the Saints Association, and his loud roar made the noisy environment quiet. After the classroom became quiet again, Augustus also felt a strange aura. He waved his hand lightly, and the window opened automatically. Under the leadership of Lily, the owls flew in an orderly manner. They threw a note in their feet in front of everyone, and then flew away in a hurry, as if they were about to start the next journey. Picking up the note in front of him, there was an encrypted text inside, and Augustus took out his elder wand, and waved it lightly. Accompanied by a burst of golden light continuously shuttling through the crowd, a short sentence gradually emerged on the blank note. Help. Voldemort has gone mad. He is slaughtering wizards who are still in the wizarding world of England. They even went to London to capture the families of those wizards and the wizards staying in the Muggle world. They killed a lot of people. A lot of people died in front of me. The text on the paper ended in a hurry here, and the person who sent this message didn't have time to finish writing all the content, but saw the handwriting on the note. Augustus' face became heavy. He knew why Voldemort was so crazy, but he never thought that the other party wanted to regain his Horcrux. To be so insane to such an extent, you must know that this level of calling for help will only be activated when it is the most dangerous. It seemed that the other party had completely lost his mind, and he was desperate for his own life. Then when Augustus was thinking, a huge commotion broke out in the classroom that was barely quiet just now. Let me go. I'm going to find my parents. They're both in London. They're in danger now. I'm going to find my mother. She told me a few days ago that she is safe. Is she in danger now? The students kept yelling and wanted to leave the classroom to find their parents, but they had to look at the words on the paper. Now the entire British wizarding world has become unsafe. Horrible memories from 11 years ago came to my mind again. Those stories that were used by parents to scare themselves to sleep well seem to be becoming a terrible reality today. You are just looking for your own death in the past. You write a letter immediately and write it on the letter paper in your hand, and then drip your own blood on the letter paper. Draco, immediately inform Professor Snape and all the cadres of the Saints Society. I believe it is impossible for them to continue classes now. The only thing we have to do now is to make sure our parents are safe, and at the same time, all of you sit here honestly. What you should understand is that your parents are most worried about you, and I assure you that Hogwarts is the safest place in the entire British wizarding world. Looking at the commotion in the classroom, Augustus took out his wand and pressed it against his neck, shouting loudly with magic. The sound was so loud that even the dust on the ceiling shook down. This sudden roar made the students present quiet down, and they all began to write letters on that piece of stationery. Then, according to Augustus's instructions, he pricked his finger and dripped blood on the letter paper. The more vigorous one even took a big cut with a knife. The blood-soaked letter paper didn't look like greeting peace at all letter. While these students were writing letters, Draco and some members of the Saints Association had already started to take action, leading Slytherins and Gryffindor students. Immediately walk to the entire castle in a distributed manner, and let this method tell other classrooms who are still in class, or have fallen into chaos. And more letter papers were placed on the podium, and there were owls coming and going in the sky. Augustus folded his hands, and put them on his lips. Looking at the worried classmates with a calm expression, he said silently in his heart, "I hope this painful lesson can wake up some people who have been pretending to be asleep." Chapter 161 Rescue. It should be that much. If you haven't finished writing, tell them to hurry up. For every second they procrastinate, the danger to their parents will increase by 1 point. Looking at the piles of blood-stained envelopes in front of him, Augustus asked softly. Hearing Augustus' inquiry, Draco quickly looked at the roster in his hand, slid up and down gently with a pen, and said seriously after the count was correct, "All the chiefs have arrived. These people also know that the current situation is critical. Many people wanted to write long speeches, but we forcibly interrupted them. Now the entire Hogwarts students have delivered the envelopes stained with their blood according to your instructions." Hearing Draco's report, Augustus nodded slightly in approval, then stood up from his seat and came to the center of the tower. Now they are located at the highest point of the entire Hogwarts castle, the middle one of the 3 towers on the front of the castle, which was originally the bell tower of Hogwarts Castle. The big clock here will ring on time every day, which is convenient for all students to calibrate their schedules. And the big clock that has been working hard is gone at this moment, replaced by a very strange machine, which has the beauty of human machinery. Gears and steam equipment are constantly running, and several balance springs are ticking, like a huge clock movement. And it also has a magical feeling at the same time. Red and sapphires of various colors float around it, and rays of light like smoke are transmitted from the gems to the machine. Looking at this constantly running machine, Augustus first briefly checked whether a few important parameters were normal, and then took the pile of blood-stained letters from Draco's hand. After tidying up the pile of letters a bit, they threw them through the slot of this strange machine like a coin. With the continuous input of letters, this strange machine operated even faster, and thick white smoke spewed out from several air outlets. The few gemstones surrounding the machine exuded even more dazzling brilliance, and the light that was originally like smoke and dust quickly became solid. The light shoots into this machine from every corner, providing energy for the operation of this machine. And after about half a minute, the antenna-like transmitting device on the top of this strange machine began to gather dazzling light energy. When the energy of these rays gathered to a critical value, a soaring red light shot out from the top of the machine. This red light is so dazzling and fast, like a sharp sword tearing through the thick night. When the light reaches the top, it explodes quickly like fireworks rising into the sky. Tiny red rays of light flew from the center of the explosion to the surroundings like meteors. After appreciating the most gorgeous scene, Augustus pushed Draco, who was stunned, aside, and said half jokingly, "Why, are you regretting that you should bring Harley here, so that you can hug the beautiful Miss Hallie and enjoy this gorgeous scene with her?" Hearing this, Draco quickly waved his hands, blushing and trying to explain. But his explanation was interrupted by Augustus waving his hand. Augustus said slowly, "Okay, I'm not joking. The first batch of persecuted wizards should be sent here soon. Let's go to the auditorium as soon as possible. Look at how Professor Snape and the others are preparing. At the same time, cheer up and be vigilant, except for me. The people Voldemort hates the most are Harry and her mother. You must take responsibility, Mr. Malfoy. Let the other party see your courage and ability, and then the other party will forgive you." After speaking, Augustus patted Draco on the shoulder, then turned and walked towards the stairs of the tower, while Draco was completely stunned at the moment. He first looked at the machine, and then at the back of Augustus, as if struggling with something. Looking at the back of Augustus, which was about to disappear from his field of vision, Draco finally couldn't help asking, "Do you think it will work out? I hate to admit it, but there's a lot of bad gossip and Slytherin house. And if I do that, how am I going to explain it to my father?" Just when Draco was about to continue asking, Augustus' voice came slowly from under the tower. "The answer to this question will have a result when you ask it. Think about Principal Dumbledore and Professor Andreas. Although you know the real identity and past of the two of them, think about whether you feel disgusted or full of blessings when you see the two of them kissing together. If you can remember the feeling at that time, just follow the feeling. As for whether there is any result, you will not know until after you do it." Hearing this, Draco lowered his head and continued to think. After a full minute, he looked up and turned around to look at the red meteors that had disappeared into the sky. Then he wanted to turn around and catch up with Augustus, but he found that Augustus was looking at him from the railing of the stairs with half of his head exposed. Think it over, then let's go. Whether you can succeed depends on whether the other party forgives you. Anyway, in my opinion, at least you are quite happy when the other party kisses you. After finishing the last sentence with a sharp tongue, Augustus walked down the stairs first, completely ignoring Draco, who was blushing from embarrassment on the tower. After walking down the maze-like stairs, Augustus and Draco came to the Hogwarts Great Hall together. At this moment, the whole hall has completely changed. The 4 long tables have all been removed, replaced by folding beds that have already been prepared. Madame Pomfrey and Professor Snape are constantly counting the medicines stored in the school. Among them are several large boxes of finished medicines, as well as piles of gauze and some plaster and other things. But the most unusual thing is those flower pots, which look like fresh gadgets just taken out of the herbal medicine room. There is no need to count too many of these medicines. Voldemort should want to catch them alive, so that he can carry out the horrible black magic ritual. Add some vitality to his weak body of evil money, so if we rescue in time, not too many people should be injured. On the contrary, Professor Snape, you can take out those refreshing potions you have stored, so that those who are frightened can recover better. And Mrs. Potter, I remember that you cooked a large pot of high quality sleep aids, and you can also take some out, to save those poor people from the torment of nightmares. Chapter 160 To the first batch of rescued people. Hearing Augustus' explanation, Professor Snape thought for a while, then nodded, and began to take out bottles of marked red potions from the purse he carried with him. This was specially prepared by Professor Snape for the senior students, so that those with poor learning ability could survive his night class tutoring. It is said that the effect is particularly remarkable. Just a little mixing with tea can make a poor student who is distracted and prone to sleepiness acquire the ability to study for more than 15 hours a day. And Mrs. Potter also began to take out bottles of silver potions with sleep marks from her lady's satchel. These potions were all brewed by Professor Snape at the request of the other party. In name, it was to relieve the pressure of the students, but in fact it was to make up for himself. These potions can make those senior students who have experienced night cram schools fall asleep quickly, so as to avoid accidents caused by overwork. Looking at the busy Professor Snape and Mrs. Potter, Madame Pomfrey couldn't help but walk up to Augustus with small steps and spoke righteously. Mr. Dumbledore, I don't think it's enough to rely on these potions alone, in case they get injured during the escape. This is a very likely situation. After all, in that chaotic situation, some small bumps are always inevitable. So I think. Just when this kind lady wanted to continue talking, Augustus was very polite and pressed the right hand that the other party had already raised. Said very gently and politely, "Of course, beautiful lady, your preparations are of course well thought out, but we don't need these things right now. Compared to this, it is better to prepare a few more beds. You must know that many people will come to Hogwarts Castle by then, and your reserves are very good. I think Voldemort's next plan is very likely to attack Hogwarts Castle directly. At that time, in the fierce battle, these reserves of yours will be able to play a huge role. Thank you for your efforts, beautiful lady." After saying a lot of respectful words, Augustus gracefully kissed the back of Madame Pomfrey's hand. After this series of compliments, Madame Pomfrey nodded in satisfaction, and then directed the panting Hufflepuff students. The strange medicinal herbs that were finally moved here, as well as several large boxes of bandages and white fresh to stop bleeding, were moved back to the herbal medicine room and infirmary intact. Under the pleading eyes of those Hufflepuff students, Augustus could only helplessly shrug his shoulders, so these little badgers turned their eyes to Julius, who was aside. But before Julius could respond to them, Miss Pomfrey spoke first. "You can't use magic to carry these. You must know that this is a very precious item. What if there is any bump?" As he spoke, he drove the Hufflepuff students who were sitting on the ground panting one by one like a mother driving a child home. While driving away, he also said loudly, "Look at how fat you all are. Isn't the previous menu pretty good? It's both nutritious and British. I have to change what German and French food I eat. Look at your current figure and what you will look like if you don't exercise." As he spoke, he yelled and drove the rounder Hufflepuffs from behind, while Augustus, who had been standing by the side, turned his head to look at Julius and asked softly, "What about the casualties? I don't want too many innocent people to die in the process. As for the condition you mentioned, we can wait until the conference is held next year, and then we will be able to compete fairly, under everyone's attention, decide who is the strongest wizard of the younger generation." Facing Augustus's words, Julius seemed a little disdainful, and he said flatly, while playing with his carved revolver, "Basically there were no casualties. Our warning was sent out when the other party made a move, except for those who were basically hopeless. The vast majority of people have escaped, and I think they will come here soon, but what I want to ask is more. How do you plan to face them? Use the legendary tenderness offensive, like the leaders in those movies, and ask yourself if you have any difficulties and need help, or something else." When he said this, Julius first turned the gun beautifully, retracted the revolver into the holster, and then imitated the actions of the leaders in the movie, and said strangely, facing the other party's ridicule, Augustus was not angry, but said flatly, "Of course not. You must know that language education between people is very slow. I generally prefer practical exercises. Although these people basically escaped, they are faced with the urgency of death and the torture of Death Eaters. I believe they must have had a very memorable time during this period, and their hearts must be full of regrets. As for those wizards in the Muggle world, I don't have to worry even more. Those so-called dark wizards here, they haven't changed anything at that level yet. At most, it's just creating some confusion, but that's good, and it can be regarded as helping us achieve our goal." After Augustus finished speaking, Ms. Pomfrey came back first, and several Hufflepuff students came back with him. However, the other party did not have his medicines and other miscellaneous items at this time, but a few middle-aged people who were still in shock, and several students supported each other, walking step by step towards the depths of the Hogwarts auditorium. "Mr. Dumbledore, as you said, most of them were not injured, but their mental state seems to have been severely impacted. Mrs. Potter and Professor Snape, please check their status. I'm too busy to do it by myself now." It was Madame Pomfrey who was speaking, and she was frantically directing several Hufflepuff students to put those middle-aged people who were still in shock on the bed. While Ms. Pomfrey was speaking, with several blasts of air, several parents of the students who were hunted down were transported into the auditorium through the magic of Augustus. Some of them looked very embarrassed, with ragged clothes, as if they had gone through a long-distance run, while others looked calm and composed, wearing decent overalls or suits. As more and more people were found, they were either found by other students and sent to the auditorium, or they were directly sent to the auditorium. The entire Hogwarts Great Hall began to make noise. Hufflepuff students were helping the teachers to carry sundries, and Gryffindor students were carrying daily supplies here. The students of Ravenclaw accompanied Professor Snape and Mrs. Potter, helping to record the mental state of every parent who came to the auditorium. While checking some parents with mild symptoms or no symptoms, the Slytherin students were holding a set of strange equipment, something like a metal detector. Start scanning the parents of the students who came to the auditorium, in case there are some individuals in the crowd who have been cast with the Imperious Curse. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 163 Simple Chat. Just as the rescue operation was unfolding in an orderly manner, Julius and Augustus had already retreated to a corner of the auditorium. Both of them were observing these people who were magically transported to Hogwarts. "Are you really not going to show your concern? You know, this is a good opportunity to win people's hearts. They have just experienced a little bit of life and death. At this time, people's hearts are the most vulnerable. You should give a touching speech, and then express your concern for them with practical actions. I think they'll join you soon enough, and help the cause we want to fight for." After observing for about 5 minutes, Julius looked at the motionless Augustus and asked suspiciously, "It's not enough. The current situation is far from enough. Caring for groups doesn't work at all. People always follow blindly. They don't have complete empathy for other people, but they tend to have great empathy for a few individuals. However, the current state is already very good. Whether it is necessary to carry out the next performance depends on God's will. Augustus, who heard Julius's question, shook his head slightly. He leaned against the doorframe of a side door of the auditorium and looked at the moon that had slowly risen into the sky. Today is a rare sunny day. The moon is extremely bright and clear without any cloud cover. The white moonlight is projected on the ancient castle. A beautiful picture appears in front of Augustus. Actually, when I first came to this castle, I didn't fall asleep the whole night, and I sat on the table in front of the French windows. That day also happened to be a sunny day, and the moon was as beautiful as it is now. I watched the moon shine on this ancient castle, and thought a lot. Actually, I couldn't believe my situation at the time. I had imagined many situations, but coming to Hogwarts was something I had never imagined. At that time, I just wanted to enjoy life, and didn't care too much about other things, such as huge wealth, outstanding talent, beautiful appearance and prominent background. The things I once dreamed of have become so easy to obtain, and the classmates around me are so innocent and lovely. I thought I'd just stay here, make trouble for Professor McGonagall, and wash Professor Snape's unwashed oily hair. The farthest I can think is to help Harley resurrect her mother and give a lonely savior a chance to enjoy love. But that all changed that day. Having said that, Augustus became silent. He cast his eyes on the lawn outside the window. His eyes were deep, and he didn't know what he was looking at. Corneli Fudge, right? This obese bastard has inspired your inner essence. Or maybe it's not your essence, but it's definitely part of your blood. The boundless anger, the rage that wants to destroy everything. You feel that, right? Following Augustus' gaze, Julius also saw the lawn, and he also stared there blankly, speaking softly without turning his head. The lawn under the moonlight looks a little calm. The lively grasses that used to float with the wind seem to be covered with a layer of silver white quilts under the moonlight. A sleeping baby in a cradle. The scenery outside the window is so quiet and peaceful, which is in stark contrast to the scene inside the window, which is already in a hurry and even crying. As if separated by a thin layer of glass, the world is divided into two places. One is a world of mortals full of human emotions such as sadness, joy, fear and so on. One is a peaceful place formed by the moonlight grassland, calm and noisy. Everything is such a contradiction, and everything is such a harmony. That's right, I know there are some secrets hidden in my body, and even Papa Grindelwald can't tell what the third bloodline is. This bloodline has a very peculiar effect, that is, it is powerful and inviolable. Anyone who despises me will arouse my endless anger. That kind of anger comes from deep inside, and is almost uncontrollable. It can only be suppressed by venting with infinite power. At the same time, it also brought about a severe sense of loneliness. I could hardly get along with other people normally. I was performing all the time, and I'm sure you felt it too. I'm polite and restrained to almost everyone, but I can't get into other people's hearts. In my eyes, everyone seems to be a tool. The difference is whether it is easy to use, whether it can upgrade itself or be eliminated. Having said that, Augustus paused again. He seemed to be still thinking about what words to use to say the following words, and he began to feel a little apprehensive. Then I'm also your tool, an advanced tool that is almost as perfect as you. Or when Papa Grindelwald created you, he also regarded you as a tool. The same tool used to realize his unrealized dreams, or to prove himself. Or, no. Before Julius finished speaking, Augustus interrupted him forcefully. Although he tried his best to show restraint, he could still feel his great anger through his deep voice. After interrupting Julius's words, Augustus withdrew his gaze from the lawn, turned his head to look at Julius, looked into his eyes and said seriously, "No, I can feel love, but this kind of love is too rare, and Daddy Dumbledore's life is constantly passing away. They denied me a lot of ways to prolong my life, and I'm just scared that after they die, I'm going to be completely an orphan." Augustus didn't say any more. He didn't know if it was because it seemed very embarrassing to confess like this, or for some other reason. He just looked into Julius' eyes, then suddenly turned around and said plainly, "The last batch of our people is coming soon. We'd better go to the square and wait for them." After all, we are hard-working heroes in the organization. As you said, it is still very necessary to personally meet with a leader. After finishing speaking, Augustus walked out of the auditorium without looking back, leaving only Julius standing by the window, looking at the moonlight and grass outside the window. And the back of Augustus, who had already walked outside, said lightly, "Are you scared? I was scared too, but I'm not scared now, and I'm sure you are too, brother." Chapter 164 The Dead Lady. The square directly in front of Hogwarts Castle was different from the quiet nights in the past. The square was crowded with people, and students kept coming here to see if there were any wounded to be transported away. At the same time, some students who haven't found their parents will also come here to see if their parents have been teleported here. Students from different colleges walked around, but they no longer communicated with each other as before. Everyone's eyes were full of fear and fatigue. But now the silent crowd immediately separated a road to the left and right, and Augustus and Julius walked here peacefully. Augustus' face looked a little heavy, but Julius on the side was very happy. He looked at Augustus with a smile, and said slowly in a very small voice, "I really didn't expect you to wait for me there. It seems that what you just told me is indeed true. You shouldn't be so big and afraid of the dark." No way, no way. My elder brother is actually a person who is afraid of the dark. It would be big news if it gets out. Although Julius lowered his voice so that the other people beside him could not hear the conversation between the two, Augustus still felt abnormally stuffy. He regretted talking so much with the guy in front of him. Just now, seeing the beautiful moonlight, he confided his heart to his so-called younger brother quite naturally. But based on the feedback received so far, this kind of behavior should not happen again in the future. In order to avoid any more embarrassing things from happening, Augustus strode quickly through the crowd, then came to the center of the entire square, took out his broken gold pocket watch, looked at the time, and looked at it again. The moon in the sky seemed to be waiting for something. "You are such a sentimental man. This gold pocket watch was one of the first Christmas presents you ever received. You are always so disinclined to throw away old things. It's broken. Why do you still keep it? Useless things should be eliminated, whether it's a pocket watch or those trash." Seeing Augustus' broken gold pocket watch, Julius couldn't help complaining. "I have asked the other party to throw away the broken watch more than once, and I have also given several more exquisite gold pocket watches to the other party. But the other party just didn't want to throw away these old things. Those messy things had been piled up in his dormitory. Every time I want to go inside to steal, oh no, it should be to get some special materials, but I will always be blocked by these messy sundries." In the face of Julius' complaints, Augustus did not refute, but silently put away the broken gold pocket watch, and then said softly, "I smell blood. It seems that there are still some flaws in this perfect plan." Following Augustus's words, the space above the square began to twist. Accompanied by a burst of golden flames, 3 people, 2 women and 1 man, fell to the ground of the square. Seeing that another wounded person was brought in, the student who had been waiting so early hurried over, trying to help him up from the ground. "Don't move them. They are all seriously injured. You go and inform Madame Pomfrey and other professors to come here immediately. Looks like we are in trouble." The movements of several students were stopped by Augustus sternly, and it was not until this time that everyone could clearly see the scars on these students. Looking through the moonlight, the scars on several people's bodies can be described as shocking. Just in the past half an hour, the most serious wounded that Hogwarts has ever received was just a broken leg during the escape, and most of them only suffered some skin trauma. More people are just seriously injured. After all, many people have lived in such a bad environment for many days, and some people have just been imprisoned in Azkaban. And the 3 people in front of them seemed to have been attacked by some wild beast. There were marks of being bitten all over their bodies. Blood was continuously flowing from the wounds, and their clothes seemed to be torn into pieces by sharp claws. While the students were still calling Miss Pomfrey to come, Augustus knelt down to examine the wounds on her body carefully, and then asked the man among them, "Mr. John, have you been attacked by a werewolf? And according to my observation, the wolf's poison virus has penetrated into your blood." Hearing what Augustus said, the students who were still watching immediately took a few steps back, looking at the eyes of the wounded. They also changed from pity to fear just now. This can't blame them for being impolite. You must know that werewolves have always been discriminated against in the magical world. People are afraid of this terrible monster. I'm even more afraid of the unsolvable virus carried by them. As long as I'm bitten by the other party, I will survive in that horrible way for the rest of my life. It's Fenrir Grebber, this despicable and shameful guy. Even if his soul is placed in hell, he is still an outstanding existence. I never imagined that there are such perverted people in this world. They took this lady and her mother away. They want to turn this lady into a werewolf, and what's more cruel, they actually want to eat that old lady directly. Mr. John didn't blame the students for their rudeness. He just looked at the two unconscious ladies who were already lying in a pool of blood. He said slowly in a mournful voice. Hearing Mr. John's desolate words, everyone present fell silent, especially those students who had shown disrespect just now. Many people wanted to come forward to express their apologies, but they didn't dare to approach them because they thought of the terrifying appearance of the werewolf. It was still a few students of Slytherin College. Under the command of Augustus, they carried the three wounded people onto the stretcher with a calm face. Soon, Miss Pomfrey, Professor Snape and Mrs. Potter came here in a hurry under the letters of several students. The moment they saw the injuries of the three people, the professor and the others couldn't help but take a breath, especially when they saw the two ladies. There was even more desolation in the eyes of several people. Mrs. Potter and Miss Pomfrey, please carry these two ladies to the auditorium and settle them down. We will go there in a while. It's best to help them change their clothes first. After all, it's a bit embarrassing to look like this now. Hearing what Augustus said, Miss Pomfrey wanted to say something, but she was pulled by Mrs. Potter's shoulders by the side. The two looked at each other, and both lowered their heads and directed a few female classmates. First carry the bodies of the two ladies in. After knowing that everyone was gone, Professor Snape looked at Augustus and asked calmly, the two of them are already dead. Maybe they were alive a few minutes ago, so others didn't see it. But when I saw each other for the first time, I already knew that it was just two corpses. You asked them to carry these two corpses in. Are you sure you want to do that? That's an extraordinary price. Chapter 165 Shameful Scene 1. Facing Professor Snape's question, Augustus just turned his head and glanced at him, then turned and walked behind everyone towards the auditorium. However, Augustus and Julius walked a bit slowly, and when the other students had all left, Julius also asked with some doubts. No one wants such a thing to happen, but if you want to revive them, you should understand the price involved. It is said that in order to revive Aunt Ariana, Father Grindelwald emptied 3 large vaults, and they are all the largest vaults of a pure-blood family with a long history of thousands of years. Although I know you don't care about these things, I hope you will not be easily swayed by emotions. After all, what you are controlling now is the organization's fund, or the dream fund of the two of us. Hearing Julius' question, Augustus stopped in his tracks. He kept looking in the direction of the auditorium and asked softly, are you trying to oppose resurrecting them? Or, no, I'm afraid that your acting is too deep, and you forget that you are an emotional person. In such an emotional battlefield, don't let reason win again. Just when Augustus was about to ask more questions, Julius had already walked in front of Augustus and spoke slowly in an extremely flat tone. Hearing the other party's answer, Augustus obviously had some doubts in his eyes. He looked at the back of the young man who couldn't even walk. After thinking for a while, he chuckled and followed quickly. At the same time, in the Hogwarts Great Hall, many students and parents gathered at the gate of the auditorium, watching the two ladies being carried in on a stretcher. A lot of chaotic discussion started to sound, and the crowd blocked the gate noisily, which made Madame Pomfrey and Madame Potter feel a little embarrassed. And just after the crowd had been noisy for a long time, a middle-aged man slowly walked to the front of the crowd. He was ordinary looking and a little bald, and his body was rather naive because of his obesity. He looked at the two stretchers covered with white cloth and said in an awkward tone, have they been bitten by werewolves? If so, I don't think it is necessary to put them here for the safety of most people. If possible, it is more appropriate to arrange them in another place, so as to take care of their injuries and avoid unnecessary consequences. This remark attracted the crowd present to repeatedly agree, and many people nodded in agreement, while Mrs. Potter and Miss Pomfrey standing outside the door were flushed with anger. How can you do this? Have you forgotten your situation just now? You are also victims. They were indeed bitten by werewolves. But it doesn't mean anything. They are just wizards protected by Hogwarts just like you. There is no difference, let alone any difference. Please get out of the way immediately. Don't you think that what you did in front of your children is extremely shameful? Ms. Pomfrey was the first to be unable to bear it. As a kind medical worker, no one in her heart is unworthy of being saved. No matter what the person who came to her had done before, at least before he recovered, he was still a patient in her eyes. And what this group of people are doing now is completely shameful and despicable and selfish. However, Ms. Pomfrey's generous speech did not shake this group of people. They still stood there stubbornly. He didn't care about the dissuasion of the children around him, nor the opinions of those behind them who didn't come to obstruct them. I'm not saying they don't need to be treated. I just hope they can go to another place. After all, today is also a full moon night. If something unexpected happens, it will be a result that everyone does not want to see. The middle-aged man who took the lead, after checking that the crowd around him hadn't left, boldly and carefully repeated his point of view. And just when he was about to continue talking, a loud shout came from behind Miss Pomfrey. "What are you doing? You just came here to take refuge. Taking you in and giving you treatment is only out of personal conduct and integrity. Or to put it more clearly, you are just taking advantage of your children. If your children are not studying at Hogwarts, what does your life or death have to do with us? As the vice headmaster of Hogwarts, I ask you to make way immediately and let these two poor ladies enter the Great Hall." It was Professor McGonagall who said this. Her voice was unusually loud, like a Gryffindor lion roaring. With this roar alone, those who stood in the way unconsciously took a few steps back. Professor McGonagall walked slowly from behind. She had just inspected the entire school and made sure that no wounded were missed, but when she came to the auditorium to take a break, she saw such a terrifying scene. The appearance of Professor McGonagall caused the crowd to shake a bit. Some parents left the crowd and entered the auditorium under the pull of their children. But even so, there are still more than a dozen parents standing there stubbornly, and what makes people feel sad is that even their children think that their parents are doing the right thing. The parents who accompanied him stood at the door of the auditorium, and with an uncompromising gesture, they firmly blocked the way out of the auditorium. The emergence of this situation made Professor McGonagall feel very ashamed and angry. She never expected that these students would be so indiscriminate between right and wrong under her own teaching. What made her even more angry was that many of these students were from Gryffindor, and a few were from Ravenclaw. Most of them were children of wizarding families. Although not as noble as those pure-blood nobles, he should have lived in the magic world for a long time. After his own teaching, how could there be such a terrible view of right and wrong? I can't imagine that under my education, you even lost the basic judgment of right and wrong. Where is your courage as a Gryffindor, and where is your wisdom as a Ravenclaw? Don't you think your behavior is shameful? Most of you, in my impression, are children with excellent studies and full of wisdom. But your current behavior really makes people feel extremely regrettable. Facing the behavior of her students, Professor McGonagall couldn't bear it anymore, and she loudly scolded those students who were still accompanying their parents to help block the door. The voice was full of anger, but also revealed a trace of unspeakable sadness. Chapter 166 Speech in a Crowd. And when the scene reached a stalemate, several students who blocked the door together covered their mouths and noses with handkerchiefs and slowly came to the side of the two stretchers. Then carefully lifted the white cloth covering the two ladies, and the moment they saw each other's faces, several of them cried out involuntarily, "The corpses, they are completely dead. How can you carry the two corpses into the auditorium?" After screaming for a while, a Ravenclaw student pointed at the two stretchers and shouted loudly. And while yelling, he wanted to lift the two white cloths away, and the moment the opponent's hand just touched the white cloth, a silver white magic ray hit the opponent's body at lightning speed, and the student flew upside down with his whole body, and then fell heavily on the steps at the entrance of the auditorium. Pay attention to your identities. If it is really difficult to understand the etiquette in society, then please also remember your gender. As a well-bred gentleman, facing two disheveled ladies, you should maintain a minimum of respect for each other. Julius held up his wand of pepperwood and walked towards the auditorium step by step with Augustus next to him, while Augustus stared at the student who fell to the ground with his own eyes. With cold said slowly, seeing that the situation was getting out of control, the middle-aged man who was the representative of the crowd came to Augustus with a calm attitude and said in a flattering tone, "I'm sorry, Mr. Dumbledore, we were just afraid that the two of them would threaten everyone's safety, so we were forced to do this. We're definitely not." Just when the other party was about to continue talking, Augustus suddenly stretched out his right hand to block the other party's face, then looked at the other party's flattering smiling face with his own eyes, and said coldly, "Mr. Strong, right. I heard you were one of the most famous reporters of the Daily Prophet. But you should be working in the Ministry of Magic recently. You published a lot of false information in the so-called magical truth. As a result, many people were deceived by you and stayed in that sad place. I remember how you commented on me, a child who thought he was smart, a tyrant who will bring the wizarding world to ruin, Mr. Right." That icy tone seemed to be chilling, causing the rich middle-aged man in front of him to shudder from head to toe. The other party's eyes dodged, and he hesitated for a long time and couldn't say a word. At this moment, Augustus looked at the student beside him, said in the same cold tone, "Mr. Bowman Wright, a very good Ravenclaw. Your pursuit of wisdom is very admirable, but I need you to understand. Whether it is Muggle science or our magic, once it loses its humanity and right and wrong, it is no longer a power we can use, but a scourge that leads to our utter destruction. I believe that the reason why you stand here is definitely not the same as your father, but your current behavior makes people feel very disappointed." After finishing speaking, Augustus no longer cared about the wonderful expression on the student's face, but looked at the people who had not had time to leave, and said loudly in a tone of hatred, "Look at what you are doing. You are using your actions to bring two ladies to their deaths. Every minute that you stand in the way here will become the reason for the other party's death. You are killing two lives with your own hands, your own actions, and your collective will. Most of you are those who choose to stay in the wizarding world. You look down on those wizards who go to the Muggle world. You can't understand what we are doing now, because you think that you are the elite among wizards, but you are definitely not as good as you think. You are just a group of selfish villains." After finishing speaking, Augustus waved his hand lightly, and the crowd standing at the entrance of the auditorium were forcibly pushed to both sides of the gate by invisible forces. After doing all this, Augustus took Miss Pomfrey and Mrs. Potter and sent the two ladies to the single room that had been isolated for a long time. Several Slytherin girls sent in the clean clothes they had prepared long ago. At the same time, almost everyone surrounded the single room, and most of them didn't care too much about whether the two ladies were infected with the werewolf virus. They are more concerned about what to do next, and now they feel extremely confused, and they can only place their hopes on this Dumbledore who is not much older than their own children. The crowd spontaneously surrounded Augustus, wanting to hear what the other party should do next. After seeing everyone gathered around, Augustus stood on a table, looked down at the crowd and said loudly, "Until now, I hope that all of you have seen clearly the true face of the Ministry of Magic. They have no right to represent the British magical community at all. They are nothing more than a bunch of thieves and a bunch of liars, neither of whom are capable of solving the crisis that is happening in the wizarding world of England. The more shameful lies have trapped you in that hell. Think about what you have lived in the past 2 months, and think about what I told you before. Have you ever doubted my words before? Doubted the future I said, but now, I believe that I don't need to say anything more. The reality is here, which is more convincing than any words. Look at the dust on your own body, and look at those around you who are not dusty. Think about my own life in the past 2 months, and look at the achievements of others now. The magical world needs a change, a thorough and orderly change. Internal decay and external progress are exchanging the power of wizards and muggles. We can no longer sit still. Time is not on our side. In the past, our ancestors chose to hide in order to survive, and we can also choose to embrace the whole world for our future. As for the turmoil that just happened, I can only say that I feel very sorry, but what I want to emphasize here is that no one can hinder the pace of this change. and all people will be liquidated during this change. The good deeds done in the past will be rewarded, and all the evil consequences hidden in the dark will be swallowed by the people they created. After finishing his speech to the crowd, Augustus walked down from the table and spoke softly, while standing in the center of the crowd. Take a good rest, and I hope you can communicate and inquire about other people's recent lives. If you are not sleepy, you can stay and take a look. Just now Mr. Wright said that these two ladies are already 2 corpses. I don't deny this. But who told you that corpses cannot be resurrected? Don't forget that we have magic, and magic has never been logical. Chapter 167 Disgusting Crowd. After Augustus's words, the people who were about to leave stopped in their tracks one after another, and all of them turned their heads to stare blankly at Augustus. Except for a very few individuals like Professor Snape, the vast majority of people have no idea that Augustus holds the secret of bringing the dead back to life. In the eyes of most people at Hogwarts, Mrs. Potter is Harry's distant aunt. Although she looks a lot like your mother, no one has ever thought that she is indeed the revived mother of Harry. Gryffindor's eldest sister, Ariana Dumbledore, is just another distant branch of the Dumbledore family. Almost no one thought that these 2 living people were actually resurrected. To bring the dead back into reality, only in ancient legends can someone master such a secret technique. In this era, where Avada Kedavra is already top level magic, that kind of magic is what most people imagined. I can't even imagine it. Most of the people in the crowd wanted to open their eyes and experience this legendary magic. However, some people seem to be more worried. Among them are those wizards blocking the door represented by Mr. Wright. They are originally incompatible with most of the people because of their own reasons. Now that he heard that Augustus was going to perform such magic, he seemed particularly disdainful, and Mr. Wright, who had lost face in the middle, walked to the front of the crowd again, looked at Augustus, and said with disdain, "Mr. Dumbledore, I know you have extraordinary abilities, but it is simply impossible to bring a dead person back to life. We have never heard of such a thing. If we insist, in the entire British wizarding world, there is probably only one person who can do it. That's Voldemort, who was shot by Avada Kedavra but revived again." As soon as the name Voldemort appeared, the crowd that had finally calmed down just now began to stir again. And looking at this fat middle-aged man, Augustus felt a little bit surprised. He didn't doubt how bad his conduct was. He was just surprised that this person's conduct could be so poor. The other party did not gain any benefit at all by doing so. It was purely like a child playing with his temper, deliberately trying to embarrass himself for the sake of face. At the same time, he looked at the group of wizards surrounding this man, and after careful observation, Augustus thought of a word White left in his mind. This group of people, which should have appeared more than 10 years later, unexpectedly appeared as the leader among the wizard group, a group of waste with a strange sense of morality, a superior life, and no fireworks in the world. Their thinking angle is always so tricky, and they always do some self-contradictory things, but in fact they are just a group of extremely selfish and refined egoists. People like this are the people Augustus hates the most, and they are also the most disgusting group of people in future reforms. They are not as stubborn as the group of pure-blood nobles. For their own vested interests and prominent status, they directly oppose this change. Although this kind of apparent opposition is powerful and intertwined, it is not very difficult to deal with, giving them certain benefits, and ensuring enough violence to destroy them. These pure-blood nobles who are mature and have certain political talents will join the reform voluntarily, or semi-voluntarily through a simple comparison of interests. But people like Mr. Wright are the most difficult group to deal with. They say that they are the elite among the common people, and represent the interests of the vast majority of people. But they use it as capital to coerce those with vested interests, to give up their interests, and use it as a slogan, to grab more power from below. They always pretend to be representatives of the majority, but in reality they are just a group of egoists with very disgusting moral values. Seeing Mr. Wright, who wanted to take advantage of the fear of the crowd and regain the right to speak, Augustus gave Julius a look after glancing at him. After waiting for the signal, Julius quickly made an OK gesture quietly, and he was already thinking about how to torture this disgusting idiot. "Stop agitating your inflexible lips," So what about Voldemort? He is just using low-end and broken black magic to achieve so-called immortality. Some evil means that can't be put on the table at all. Think about what he looks like now. He is neither human nor ghost, but you, Mr. Wright. The false statements you registered in those newspapers before caused so many innocent people to suffer misfortune. I don't think you have forgotten what you did. And today, everything you have done is under the watchful eyes of the public. I said that after this matter is over, everyone will usher in a complete liquidation. I have written down your account. Now please go away immediately. We have arranged a place for you to live in. As soon as these words came out, everyone present looked at each other in confusion, because in this large auditorium, only simple single rooms were built with wooden sticks and white cloth. There is no place to rest at all, and many people are thinking of simply laying down the floor. Hearing what Augustus said, it seems that they have a better place to go. Clap. Facing everyone's puzzled expressions, Augustus didn't want to say any more nonsense. He slapped his hands lightly twice, and a faint blue light formed by a powerful magical energy. With Augustus as the center, it quickly spread out to the surroundings. Wherever the magic light went, those simple single rooms built with white cloth and wooden sticks immediately changed dramatically. The simple wooden sticks were replaced with shining metal, the translucent white cloth was replaced with thick green canvas, and all the changed tents were embroidered with the college logos of the students and their families. On the college logo is the family's surname. Look for your family's residence according to the college and surname. We have prepared the things inside. Although it is a bit rudimentary, it is definitely much better than before. After casting the magic, Augustus made a gesture of inviting everyone in, and said slowly in a flat tone. Seeing the changes in those simple single rooms, many people couldn't help their curiosity, and took the lead in entering the nearby tents to check. After checking, a wizard who looked like Muggle-born shouted in surprise. "Thank you very much, Mr. Dumbledore. It's a simple place, and there is a complete home inside. You will go in and take a look. I think a lot of people don't have a house that's as big as the inside, with a little fireplace in it, and oh my god, I'd love to live in it for the rest of my life." Chapter 168 Dealing with God of Death. This sorcerer's exclamation immediately excited most of the people present, and they all left the place where they were standing just now, and walked towards the tent marked with their surname. Then he looked into the tent excitedly, and saw 3 rooms, and 1 living room inside the tent. Small rooms made of wooden boards, which can be said to be a luxurious villa in the forest, and a small fireplace in the villa. The dry wood that was prepared was crackling and burning in the fireplace. After seeing this warm residence, many people greeted their families one after another, wanting to go in and rest as soon as possible. After all, even if you see the profound magic that brings the dead back to life, so what? You have self-knowledge. That kind of power is simply not something you can learn by yourself. On the contrary, in this wonderful night, all the people who have experienced life and death called their wives and children to reunite in this special warm and emotional room. Tell me about the thrilling moment you have just experienced, and take a good rest by the way. No matter how important things tomorrow are, they are basically tired now. Seeing that most of the people had returned to their residences and began to rest, Professor McGonagall and the others breathed a sigh of relief. After all, in the long history of Hogwarts, there had never been so many people coming to this castle at the same time even if he knew that Augustus was superior, but the other party did not have the lofty prestige of Principal Dumbledore after all. If something happened accidentally, it would undoubtedly be a huge risk for Hogwarts. Mr. Wright, it seems that you are still easy to learn, but what I want to remind you is to pay attention to your identity and gender. I'm about to cast a spell on the 2 ladies, and it's obviously not quite right for you to be here, with your son making such a faux pas. But after almost everyone left, Mr. Wright and a few people who looked like top middle class people still stood there in a daze. Even if their children have already started to persuade their parents, these people are still unmoved. Thinking about their so-called self-esteem, it is difficult to get over this matter directly. Hearing Augustus' sarcasm, Mr. Wright showed his calmness as a reporter, and he said slowly and flatly, "Of course, we will only watch from the outside to make sure that there is nothing illegal in the process. I think in this ancient school, you, as the Dumbledore family, shouldn't openly use that kind of evil black magic. When these remarks came from the other party's mouth, Augustus knew what the other party was thinking, and he just wanted to borrow this thing that their common sense believed could not be realized. Let's take a look at Augustus' methods. Once his own methods fail to achieve what he claims, the other party will immediately launch the so-called public opinion counterattack, which is to regain their so-called right to speak on behalf of the majority. After this series of language games, Augustus has fully understood that the 5 or 6 people in front of him must be the ones he needs to eradicate, even if this will affect their reputation among some students. Such hypocritical and disgusting people must leave the future they have designed. Of course, such an illegal and extremely violent method must not be used by himself. As for the object to be used, and the person to be blamed, Augustus has already selected the murderer for the other party. After giving the other party a last look without any emotion, Augustus turned to look at Professor Snape, and said softly in a flat tone, "Professor, I believe that you have completed what I told you. I have never doubted your talent. This kind of soul has just suffered a tragic death. It's very easy to regroup, let them see it, and add some breadth to their poor cognition." Hearing what Augustus said, Professor Snape calmly took out a bottle of potion with faint blue light from his wallet. The container holding the potion is not so much a medicine bottle as it is more like a bottle of champagne with a strange light. And under the lingering blue light, wisps of silver grey mist surround the champagne bottle in a circular state. After seeing this special bottle of champagne, Augustus walked to Julius's side and looked at the 2 champagne glasses engraved with strange runes that the other party had already held. And different from ordinary glass products, the material of the wine glass is more like a special citrine, and there are all kinds of strange runes engraved on it, all of which are shining with the same weird blue light. After observing the 2 champagne flutes for a while, Augustus used his elder wand to cut a gash in the palm of his left hand. Golden blood flowed out from the wound, and then slowly flowed into the champagne glass. With the inflow of golden blood, the runes on the champagne showed even more dazzling light. The guardian of the other shore, the apostle who harvests all souls, the final judge who punishes the evil in the world, and the guide who leads the good souls to the other shore. Here I'm appealing to you, using my blood to make a deal with you, in exchange for those 2 souls who just left, in the name of Fire Lord. In reciting this long series of incantations, Augustus does not use English, but a very old Celtic language. After the sound-like church chanting ended, it was the professor who opened the special bottle of champagne and poured the faint blue liquid into the champagne glass. Julius, who was holding a champagne flute in his hand, lightly touched the 2 champagne flutes. Ding. The clear and crisp sound of crystal collisions constantly echoed in the still not very quiet auditorium, and this sound overwhelmed all the noise. It seemed that at the moment when the 2 cups collided, the entire auditorium was muted, leaving only the crisp sound of star collisions echoing continuously. Finally, after the voice slowly disappeared, everyone's eyes focused on the 2 champagne glasses again. The faint blue liquid in the cup has completely disappeared, replaced by 2 faint golden rays of light. The light gathered in the champagne glass for a while, then turned into golden spots of stars, and slowly floated into the simple single room behind Augustus. After waiting for less than half a minute, I heard a creaking sound from the simple wooden bed, and then a young lady's arm lifted the white cloth behind Augustus from the inside of the single room. A young lady, carefully supporting an old lady, walked slowly but steadily in front of everyone. Chapter 169 Controlling Opponents. Seeing the 2 mothers and daughters who came out from behind Augustus, and the group of wizards who were still beside Augustus, all of them widened their eyes. Unbelievable that this word was almost written on their faces up. Among them, Mr. Wright had the most violent reaction. He actually wanted to touch the other person's face, so as to confirm whether the other 2 were really resurrected. However, this extremely rude behavior soon ushered in his retribution. Snapped. The young lady wanted to touch her face when she saw a bald, middle-aged man stretching out her hands, so she slapped him unceremoniously. Mr. Wright, who had been slapped a lot, finally came to his senses at this moment, because he could confirm without touching the other person that the person in front of him was definitely a living person, and his right cheek was in terribly painful pain. At this moment, Augustus was more straightforward. He lightly waved his elder wand, and several metal bracelets with strange shapes appeared in front of everyone out of thin air. Then it flew to the hands of Mr. Right and others at an extremely fast speed. The bracelet seemed to have a very magical power. As soon as it was put into the opponent's wrist, it automatically expanded and contracted, and it fit firmly on everyone's hands. There is no way to break free if you use external force. This sudden change surprised everyone present, and Mr. Right was even more annoyed. He had already lost face today, and now this behavior is undoubtedly a humiliation to them. He loudly shouted, "What does this mean, Mr. Dumbledore? I've never heard of it. You need to be treated like this when you come to be a guest under other people's roof. I need an immediate explanation of how your behavior differs from Voldemort's." Mr. Right's roar attracted the echoes of the people around him, forming a huge momentum. Facing the loud shouts of these annoying guys, Augustus ignored them, turned around to look at Mrs. Potter and Miss Pomfrey, and said softly, "Madams, please take Mizen and her mother to the tent on the left of the entrance of the auditorium. They should be very tired now, and judging from Mizen's physical condition, she should feel very hungry now, and there are some cakes and desserts prepared." An old man who did not want to be named said that eating sugar can make people feel happy. Hearing what Augustus said, Mrs. Potter and Miss Pomfrey hurried to the mother and daughter, supported the old lady and the thin lady, and walked towards the entrance of the auditorium. And when they were halfway there, Mizen finally couldn't help but look back at Augustus and asked, "Where is Mr. Brown? Is he in danger? He shouldn't have come to save us. If it wasn't for us, he wouldn't have encountered that." Looking at Mizen's weak body, Augustus was afraid that the other party would have any accidents, so he waved his hand and interrupted the other party's speech, and then spoke slowly in a flat tone. "Mr. John is resting in his tent. As for the Wolfsbane virus, you can rest assured, although you are only dreaming now. But a smart girl like you should be able to feel the changes in her body. Go to sleep and thank her. As for your inner thoughts, I think you can have a good talk with the other party tomorrow, or when it is suitable. The other party has made a bad choice. If you don't mind, you can give the other party a chance to choose again." Hearing what Augustus said, Mizen nodded slowly. Her body is really too weak. Long-term malnutrition has made her barely have the strength to stand up now. However, her mind is still very confused now, and there is an emotion so strong that even hunger has been overcome by it. She had many more questions to ask Augustus, but more to Mr. Brown. After seeing the emotion in the weak girl's pupils, Augustus had no choice but to pretend he just remembered, and said with a smile, "Don't worry too much. Mr. Brown's tent is next door to yours. I don't think he will be able to leave Hogwarts so soon. We still have very important things to do. During this process, I think you will have the opportunity to resolve the doubts in your hearts." These words made the frail girl's eyes shine again. She nodded heavily to Augustus, and with the help of Mrs. Potter, she accompanied her mother towards the entrance of the auditorium. And until the two ladies left the sight of everyone, Augustus turned his head to look at Mr. Right, who was still aggrieved beside him, and said in a bad tone, "I don't need to explain anything to you. As the director of Hogwarts, and the protector of Hogwarts Castle entrusted by my grandfather, I have the necessary control over all non-student outsiders who come to this place. Now I suspect that you have collusion with Voldemort. It's the undercover agent sent here by the other party. You are suspected of inciting the fear of the masses with your words and your actions just now. You can accuse you of molesting a woman at will. As for your sentencing, wait until after Voldemort comes to justice, but now you must limit the scope of your actions. Mr. Draco Malfoy." Hearing Augustus call his name, Draco hurried out from the crowd, followed by several senior Slytherin boys. They all wore a black suit with a base white shirt and a red tie with the Hogwarts crest on top. They are all students with the most advanced fighting skills in Slytherin College, and even the entire Hogwarts, and they act as law enforcement officers at this critical moment. Under the leadership of Draco, several men in black came to the side of Mr. Right and others, and said in an extremely unfriendly tone, "Please come with me, ladies and gentlemen. Your residence is not here. We have arranged a separate residence for you. And as you said, staying with several patients who were bitten by werewolves is undoubtedly irresponsible for your safety. Now as you wish, Please come with us." After finishing speaking, several Slytherin students took out their wands, tapped lightly on the wrists of Mr. Right, and a few red rays of light immediately emerged from the other silver bracelets. Then the red rays of light are automatically connected together, like a string of candied whores. In this way, they are intersected and copied together. Finally, dragged by several Slytherin students, these uncooperative parents were taken away from the auditorium by these men in black. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 170 Terrible Worldview. You can't do this. They are our parents. I can assure you that they are definitely not Voldemort's spies. Let them go. Why do you do this? What power do you have? What is the difference between what you do and Voldemort? You are simply a bunch of bad guys, and Slytherin College is the cradle of dark wizards. Seeing their parents being forcibly taken away in such a humiliating way, the students of Gryffindor College and Ravenclaw College couldn't sit still anymore. They walked up to Augustus to denounce each other's behavior, and several of them even took out their wands, trying to stop those Slytherin students. Facing the clowns who were barking wildly in front of him, Augustus was also unceremonious, directly waving his bone wand and shouting loudly at the students, who took out their wands. Expelliarmus arms you. Several red rays of magic light were fired from the top of the Elder Wand almost simultaneously, and then hit those students at an extremely fast speed. Almost at the same time, several students dropped their wands at the same time, and all of them flew into the hands of Julius beside Augustus. At the same time, members of the Saints Association standing beside the students immediately took out their wands and pointed them at the people in front of them. In school, you dare to point your wand at your classmates. Why did I do this? I believe that under the eyes of hundreds of people at the scene, everyone will have a complete judgment. And many of you are members of the Saints Association, or members of the Study Association. When you joined the organization, you all took an oath to maintain the unity between the colleges. But what did you say just now? You are blatantly destroying the harmony among the four colleges. Under such a critical situation, I have every reason to doubt your purpose in doing so. After finishing speaking, Augustus turned his head to look at Professor McGonagall, who was beside him. After seeing the sad expression on the other's old face, Augustus couldn't help but feel a little distressed. But he still suppressed the feeling of distress and said slowly, "Professor McGonagall, as the vice principal of Hogwarts, you are also the person in charge of the school appointed by Principal Zenglido before leaving. Regarding these students who are still studying, their opinions on how to deal with them are all up to you to decide." Facing Augustus's words, Professor McGonagall seemed extremely embarrassed. In her heart, all the students in the school were good students. Unlike Dumbledore, she remembered almost every student's name and put all her energy into their growth. Even she couldn't deny that she had devoted more effort and energy to some excellent students such as Hermione. Of course, it is just to cultivate the next generation of excellent teachers. Professor McGonagall treats all ordinary students equally, whether they are mischievous or like to learn. But today, just this evening, Professor McGonagall inevitably had doubts about the quality of her education. She never imagined that under her own teaching, there would be students who were still in school, making such indiscriminate things. The scene just now made Professor McGonagall feel extremely sad, but she still said firmly, after all, they didn't do anything to hurt their classmates, and after all, they were their parents. It's normal to have some aggressive actions. However, in school, pointing a wand at one's classmates is undoubtedly a violation of discipline. At the same time, considering the special circumstances of the current period, I suggest that they be gathered in one place and guarded to avoid unnecessary disputes and injuries. Hearing these words, everyone present nodded repeatedly. This kind of handling is undoubtedly very appropriate. It not only took care of the students' emotions, but also gave a practical plan. However, these students were obviously not convinced by Professor McGonagall's punishment, and the son of Mr. Right yelled loudly, "It's not fair at all." Augustus cast a spell on his classmates, which is seen by almost everyone. Why didn't you punish him? And why did we make a mistake? We were just doing it for everyone's safety. Those 3 people shouldn't have come here. Tonight is the full moon. Don't you want to be bitten by werewolves without bones left? This clamor made many people present feel extremely disgusted, and it also made Professor McGonagall feel even more sad. Because doing something wrong is not terrible at all. The most terrible thing is that you do something wrong and think that what you are doing is right. This kind of abnormal value will push the future of these students into the abyss. On the side, Julius was obviously a little impatient. He took out a small box from his body, opened it, took out his pepperwood wand, and shouted at the students. Wingardium Leviosa. Accompanied by the spell, the bodies of those students all floated up, and then they were stuffed into the box one by one. There is obviously a wide space inside the box, but the magic at the entrance of the box seems to be incomplete, and several students were squeezed at the mouth for a long time. Then, as if the pipeline that had been blocked for a long time was unblocked in an instant, they were all thrown into the box. With the sound of jingling and clanging, all the students were put into the magic box. Don't worry, there is a beautiful villa inside, and there are 3 house elves inside, enough to serve them well for a while. The food inside is also very sufficient. Even if they are imprisoned for 50 years, I don't think there will be too many problems. Julius said slowly, while shaking the small box with resentment. And Professor McGonagall, who heard Julius' explanation, left this place to rest first with Professor Flitwick, who was also sad. And the other spectators automatically left the venue when they saw that there was no excitement to watch. Only Augustus, Julius, and Professor Snape were left at the scene. I think you have something to do now. Just say that Mr. Riddle should be going crazy now, and you can comfort him at this time. And can bring this to him. As he spoke, Augustus threw a piece of blue crystal in front of Professor Snape. Professor Snape caught the crystal very lightly. It was a blue crystal. The crystal was very crystal clear. There was not even a single crystal impurity inside. Holding it in his hand was like holding a transparent puddle blue water. But the only discordant thing is that there is a wisp of black smoke in the center of the blue crystal, which is constantly wriggling, as if trying to break through the crystal's confinement. Voldemort's soul is stronger and more complete than the one you gave me last time, but it seems that this piece of soul fragment was not actively used by the other party to refine the Horcrux, because it is a bit too weak. But why is the soul content so high? Judging from the soul concentration, it is indeed a complete soul fragment. After observing for a while, Professor Snape couldn't help asking suspiciously. Of course it's Voldemort's soul, but it's not a Horcrux he made, but what he left on a person. I think you are very familiar with this person, and that is Harry Potter. Chapter 171. The third basement floor of the British Ministry of Magic, the central hall of the Wizengham at Parliament, used to be the glory of the British Ministry of Magic, and it is the most yearning place for all ambitious wizards in the whole of the UK. As long as you come to this place to work, you can basically be sure that your future will be infinitely bright, whether it is working in legal affairs or turning from legal affairs to politics. This is the most core place, where each minister of the Ministry of Magic will give an inaugural speech, and then formally take office amidst the symbolic votes and applause of all members. There are not only veteran politicians who have retired from various important departments, but also young people who are emerging from various departments. As long as you can work here, it means that you can touch the core of power. However, this place, which once symbolized the glory of the Ministry of Magic, has now become a place that cannot be described in words. This is not only reflected in the change of its appearance, but also in the word of mouth of British wizards. Wizards who lived in the UK before talked about this place, and they would say that this is the place where fairness and justice are enforced. But now, whenever those wizards talk about this place, they will only remain respectful on the surface, but secretly curse. It is just a place where a group of despicable and shameless old people and a group of freaks with abnormal brains are located looking at the dim Parliament Hall in front of him. Mr. Russell felt hopeless at the moment. He used to have many choices, but unfortunately, he chose the worst one. As a member of the prestigious Rosier family throughout Europe, Mr. Russell has witnessed the rise of Grindelwald and the killing of Voldemort in the British wizarding world. Several ups and downs, the ebb and flow of the tide. The whole family is also in the great waves of history. Continuous glory in decline. The Rosier family, who stood on the wrong team several times, faced a major choice this time. He chose to hedge his bets. On the one hand, his grandson was very close to his good friend, Mr. Lucius Malfoy. He led the young people of the family to do quite well in European business and slowly recovered the almost exhausted family financial resources. And he took the other members of the Rosier family who were still staying in the UK and continued to swing between the British Ministry of Magic and Augustus, with this two-sided asking price, to win more benefits for the family. When Augustus wants to hand over the financial power of the entire magic world to the Malfoy family, Mr. Russell was angry. He didn't care too much about the share allocated to the family in the process. Instead, I'm very concerned about what position my family is in during this process, and my family cannot just gain wealth. It is necessary to regain the former lofty status in the process. You must know that the so-called British pureblood nobles, in the eyes of these European pureblood wizards, are just a bunch of bumpkins. My own family, when Augustus's financial situation was just starting, contributed so many valuable network resources. And in the history of his family, there is also a woman who has a close relationship with Grindelwald, although Augustus' surname is Dumbledore on the surface. But as an old man who lived from that era and witnessed Grindelwald's heyday, Mr. Russell only needs to see the other person for the first time, and Mr. Russell can be sure that this young man must have a very important relationship with Grindelwald relation. So Mr. Russell joined forces with a group of old-fashioned pureblood families to thwart Augustus's plan at the Wizards United Bank, trying to let the other party understand that these elderly people and ancient families still have the power to dominate the wizarding world ability. While Mr. Russell and others were waiting for Augustus to surrender, the situation changed dramatically. Augustus resolutely handed over all his wealth to Lucius Malfoy, and directly ordered the Magic Congress of the United States and the French Ministry of Magic to allow them to inject funds and hold shares at the same time, directly bypassing the wizarding families in the UK, and establish the Wizarding United Bank across the entire European and American continents. Although because of Voldemort's relationship, the United Kingdom's Wizarding Bank actually exists in name only, and only has a few offices in the Muggle world. It is convenient for wizards working in the Muggle world to exchange their British pounds into galleons, but now it seems that these offices can be revoked because the current British wizarding world can no longer buy anything they want something. The other party's tactic had already made Mr. Russell and others prepare to surrender, but the appearance of Voldemort made this group of old people start using traditional wall riding techniques, wanting to negotiate with the other party again through the strategy that he may fall to the other party at any time. Is this fatal mistake that has led to Mr. Russell's current desperate situation? The former Mr. Russell naively believed that, although Voldemort was cruel, he should not be a fool. As long as the other party wanted to rule the British wizarding world, you should unite your own pureblood wizard families to strengthen your own strength, and you can use your own resources to settle many things that they are not good at. But in less than half a year, Mr. Russell felt extremely desperate, not only disappointed with Voldemort himself, but also terrified of the cruelty of the other party. Even several members of his own family were secretly executed by the other party on trumped-up charges. Just yesterday, the other party led people into his family's castle, trying to capture the remaining few Rosiers. Fortunately, the mysterious red light appeared and rescued several of his grandchildren, otherwise the Rosier family might have perished yesterday. And this morning, I received an invitation letter from the other party using Mr. Cornelius Fudge, inviting me, a lifelong member of the Wizengamot Council, to attend some plenary meeting. The moment he stepped into the gate of this Parliament Hall, Mr. Russell already thought he was a dead man, and he had seen the torture methods of the other side. But Mr. Russell is not intimidated. For more than 80 years of his life, he thought he was not a good person at all. I have never had any beliefs. The only thing I can do, and can't do, is to increase the interests of the family. Even my son and grandson say that I'm cold-blooded. It's not like an elder who doesn't have any love for family members. I can watch my granddaughter beating and scolding me indifferently, just because I married her to another important family member that she doesn't know at all. You can also severely beat your grandson because of a small mischievous move, just because the other party has humiliated the face of the family. But today, Mr. Russell felt extremely relaxed. He finally didn't have to care about the responsibilities he was carrying, and he didn't have to think about what his father had said to him. Not to mention talking to a white wall in an empty room in the dead of night. No one would care what he thought, they would just think of themselves as nothing more than a ruthless and inhuman patriarch. No one wanted to understand how he brought a family that was on the verge of collapse to the status of a first-class family in the British magic world. Today, Mr. Russell just wanted to abide by his own heart. Chapter 172. Mr. Rosier, can I sit next to you? There is no acquaintance around, and I feel a little nervous. While Mr. Russell was still recalling the past, a young voice interrupted his thoughts. When he looked up, he saw a familiar face. Rufus Scrimgeour, I remember correctly. How did you come here, and where did they catch you? Shouldn't you be with old Mr. Barty Crouch, waiting in Paris for the International Conference of Wizards? Mr. Russell asked cautiously. He couldn't believe his eyes. Facing the doubts of the old man in front of him, Mr. Scrimgeour also looked a little embarrassed. He scratched his head and said slowly, I came back yesterday because I got the news in advance that Voldemort would carry out a large-scale massacre and capture last night. I'm afraid that there will be some accidents, so I came back to take a look. When he said this, Mr. Scrimgeour spoke at a strange speed. Although he couldn't say he was stuttering, he always felt that the other party wanted to hide some information. For a girl, looking at the embarrassed young man in front of him, Mr. Russell paused the crutch in his hand and said affirmatively. Mr. Scrimgeour, who heard this, felt extremely embarrassed. His face flushed, and he was speechless for a while looking at the old man in front of him. You must want to ask, how do I know, right? Facing this young man who is not too young, but seems extremely shy at the moment, Mr. Russell is also a little interested at the moment. After all, in the current environment, there are not many things that can make him happy as an old man. Hearing this, Mr. Scrimgeour nodded silently. Seeing the opponent's movements, Mr. Russell looked him up and down, and then said slowly, pretending to be mysterious. As the former director of the Department of Magical Execution, you had a promising future, but after you defeated Peter Pettigrew, of course I doubted your battle. You are faced with two choices. One is to take refuge in Mr. Cornelius Fudge's command, but obviously this is not a good choice. The other thing is to join the organization of the people behind the accident. I really want you to choose the latter, which will also lay the foundation for you to lose your position in the future. But it's obvious that you don't care too much about your position. The other party must have promised you more benefits that you care more about. Actually, it's not difficult to guess that for a wizard who grew up in a wizard family, money shouldn't be a part of his consideration. But if you have an uncle who needs a huge amount of money for medical treatment, that's a different story. My uncle was infected with Wolfsbane virus, which was caused by Fenrir. He is a shameful prisoner. I must cut off his head with my own hands. After hearing the other party mention his uncle, Mr. Scrimgeour couldn't bear it anymore, and he roared slowly in a deep voice. Looking at the anger in the eyes of the other party, Mr. Russell felt extremely interested. He had no plan to walk out of here alive today. If he could watch a big show before he died, why not do it? But before that, I still have to answer the young man's question. So Mr. Russell continued. The wolf's poison potion is not a cheap thing. There are only a few who can refine that kind of thing, and most of the medicines on the market are not very effective. It is also very likely to shorten the patient's life, so you can only find the two most capable potion masters in the entire British wizarding world. This is the explanation of your previous behavior, but since old Barty Crouch led you out of the UK, your uncle was also transferred by that mysterious organization. You have no reason to come back here, and for a single man of your age, apart from the responsibilities of relatives, the only ones who can put you in danger are girls. Hearing the other party's reasoning, Mr. Scrimgeour couldn't help but nodded, but still asked in doubt. Your reasoning about my job is basically correct, and the content is also very detailed, but why did you just rush over the last question like this? Facing this question, Mr. Russell showed a malicious smile, then shrugged his shoulders and said casually, because the long list in front of it was inferred by me through long-term intelligence, and the latter is just a temporary speculation. The reason why I'm sure you're here for a girl is because of the silk scarf in your purse. And Grantham, a very quiet girl, I've seen her before, but please forgive my weakness, I didn't stop her when she was tortured. But I can also tell you a piece of good news, that is, there should be no problem with the other party. There is a gentleman named John Brown. He is really an upright gentleman. He saved that poor girl. After finishing speaking, Mr. Russell turned his head to look at Mr. Scrimgeour's face, and then pretended to remember just now, and said apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry, please forgive an old man's memory. This does not seem to be good news for you." Looking at the weird old man in front of him, Mr. Scrimgeour also felt extremely helpless, and at the same time he let out a deep breath in his heart. He couldn't let go of the stone that had been suppressed for a long time. "Tell me, what are you going to do? Whether it's a direct fight or something, don't tell me that you are really here for a meeting." After playing with the young man, and seeing that the other party had obviously relaxed, Mr. Russell asked slowly, and Mr. Scrimgeour, who was asked this question, also felt a little bit embarrassed. He just wanted to sit beside the old man, and try to be quiet, but I didn't expect that the old man in front of me, who has always been called cold-blooded, would behave so lively in this place. Mr. Scrimgeour didn't know how to reply for a while, but fortunately, at this moment, Umbridge the Pink Toad came to the venue first. When everyone was downcast, only this woman had a look of high spirits. Under the circumstances, that Voldemort hardly cared about political affairs and his subordinates had little political talent. This nasty disgusting woman in front of her almost somehow controlled the British Ministry of Magic. And compared to Voldemort's brutality and the violence of his subordinates, the woman in front of her was even more disgusting. She was vicious like a snake, but she always put on a smile. She always likes to say some lofty words, using the banner of the future of the wizarding world as a cover for her shameful behavior. "It seems that you are still here. I thought some of you would be late. It seems that the things I prepared earlier are not needed. My rectification work has paid off. I'm really happy today, because you are so happy to be punctual. Please wait a moment, the meeting is about to start." After seeing that the crowd at the vagina meeting was almost complete, Umbridge said slowly in that disgusting voice with his trademark smirk. And behind her, stood a few wizards in black robes, holding various things in their hands. But anyone who has stayed here for a while knows that those were recently developed by Umbridge torture tool. Chapter 173 The Weird Old Man. It is very sad, Mr. Scrimgeour, that most of us have dreamed of being in that position to speak. Because that means that you are standing at one of the tops of the entire British magic world. But what about now? The one standing in that position turned out to be someone like this. A person who is not even cruel and sinister. A disgusting person who can only flatter and be hypocritical to the extreme. Tell me about your plan. I won't express any opinion on it. You have seen what happened yesterday. From the first moment I stepped into this gate, I didn't think about getting out alive. Seeing the smirk on Umbridge's face, Mr. Russell looked unusually calm. He was leaning on his crutch with both hands, his eyes fixed on the rostrum, but he spoke slowly to Mr. Scrimgeour. But Mr. Scrimgeour, who heard this, only felt extremely regretful at the moment, and he should not have sat beside this old man. It's not always said that Russell Rosier is an emotionless interestist. He can even marry his beloved little granddaughter to that kind of remote place. Why is he so entangled in this issue? Or was the other party someone sent by Voldemort to spy on him? To be on the safe side, Mr. Scrimgeour had no choice but to respond slowly. I don't have any plans. Thanks to the Dark Lord's attention, he forgave me for my previous mistakes and allowed me to use my own efforts to make up for all the regrets. That's why I'm here. I do have work to do today, but it's not what you think. Hearing this, Mr. Russell turned his head slowly, looked at the nervous young man in front of him, and seemed to want to see some clues from his face. Is that so? I don't believe that fellow Voldemort has such kindness. He is just a child who lacks the care of his parents when he is young and lacks the care of others when he grows up. His small belly is probably known to everyone in the British wizarding world. I doubt that he will forgive you so easily. Mr. Scrimgeour, who heard the words, unconsciously moved his butt away, and several members of Parliament sitting around Mr. Russell also hurriedly and quietly moved their seats away. This can't blame them for being too timid. You must know where this place is now, and this place is no longer the highest honor hall of the British Ministry of Magic. It is Voldemort's lair, the execution platform of the opponent and the place where innocent people died. The staff who are still working here today revealed that in the dead of night, there will always be mournful wailing from this place. Rather than saying that this is a place for meetings, it would be more appropriate to call it the Devil's Nest. It is undoubtedly extremely dangerous and very unwise to directly discuss Voldemort in such a place, or even talk about the other party's character and narrow-mindedness. But even if the people around showed obvious resistance, Mr. Russell didn't seem to want to stop. He continued to speak slowly. A mentally retarded person who can only use violence. I don't know why so many people follow him, especially those from pure-blood families. Could it be that the superior life and higher-level education have rendered them incapable of thinking? I will believe the empty promises written by such a person, and believe in the illusory future promised by the other party. If I go back to the past, I will definitely use this old crutch in my hand to hit myself hard on the head at that time. Mr. Russell's tone of voice was very steady, and his voice was relatively high-pitched. Even the other congressmen sitting below turned their heads to the side in doubt. Mr. Russell, your words are a bit inappropriate. We should. Until this time, an old man who had been sitting on Mr. Russell's left stopped him with words. When he heard someone stop him from speaking, Mr. Russell just turned his head and glanced at the other party, and then continued to speak slowly. Old Bok, I think you are almost 80 years old this year. Haven't you lived enough? Although your family has withered a lot, don't you still have a nephew still alive in this world? Where is the other party now? Oh, I remembered. He seems to have been sent to Europe by that Mr. Dumbledore to manage his business. It is said that he has made a lot of money. Didn't he come back to see you? Hearing the other party talk about his nephew, he also mentioned the boy's name, which must never be mentioned here. The gentleman called Old Bok seemed a little nervous. He waved his hand quickly, moved his position away again, and then spoke from a long distance away. No, he and I have cut off all contact a long time ago. We have never been in contact at all. I don't understand what you said at all. I don't understand what you're talking about at all. And I don't want to know about him. So that's it. The meeting is coming soon. After finishing speaking, the old man moved his position further away. Fortunately, there are few people in the entire council. Otherwise he probably wouldn't be able to go wherever he wanted so easily. Seeing his old friend doing this, Mr. Russell didn't feel any surprise. Instead, he continued to turn his head and looked up, down, left, and right. Then he looked at the people around him and said, "Some people in your own family have connections with that Dumbledore. Do you want me to introduce them to you one by one? If you don't know, I can tell you. I heard that they have all made a lot of money. You can go back and enjoy yourself. Why do you do such thankless things here?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone sitting around Mr. Russell immediately followed the example of the old Mr. Bork and walked away from Mr. Russell to sit down again. Within a radius of more than 10 meters around Mr. Russell, there was no longer any member of parliament sitting there, only this weird old man and Mr. Scrimger on his right hand with an embarrassed expression. It wasn't until this time that Mr. Russell turned his head to look at Mr. Scrimger and asked seriously again. "Now that there is no interference from other people around, you can tell me about your plan, and I will tell you directly. If the other party is really small-minded, I don't think he will survive to go to Hogwarts. Anyway, I will be myself today. By the way, let me tell you about my own secrets. Many people think that the noble Rosier family is basically a graduate of Slytherin College. That's me, the patriarch who is considered cold-blooded by everyone. I graduated from Gryffindor College. Chapter 174 Scary Monster. Hearing that the other party had a showdown with him, Mr. Scrimger seemed even more embarrassed, but seeing the stubborn expression on this weird old man's face, Mr. Scrimger seemed a little sorry. He said slowly with a very small voice, "I'm sorry to you, Mr. Russell. I may be a little sorry for what I'm going to do today, but I can only reveal so much to you." After hearing this, Mr. Russell only looked seriously at Mr. Scrimger's face, then took out his wand and tapped it on his temple. A memory like white smoke was pulled out from Mr. Russell's mind, and the other party pulled out the memory and waved it up gently. That short memory, like real white smoke, drifted slowly in the air, and disappeared without a trace. After finishing all this, Mr. Russell collected himself, and then turned his head in doubt, looked at Mr. Scrimger at the side, and said in a blunt tone, "Please don't sit here, sir. I will do something that will not have a good impact today. In order to avoid the impact, please sit farther away." At the moment, Mr. Scrimger, who was on the right side of Mr. Russell, was shocked, looking at the stubborn old man in front of him, and listening to the other party's unfriendly tone. He could only nod silently, and then, like all the people who had just left, he chose a place far away from the other party, and sat down again. Just as Mr. Scrimger sat down, the side door of the Parliament Hall, which had been closed all along, was suddenly opened from the outside, and 4 Death Eaters entered first. They are Augustus Lestrange, Barty Crouch Jr., Igor Karkaroff, and those who were not Death Eaters, but because of their cruel actions yesterday, Voldemort specially awarded them to the Dark Lord. Logo of Fenrir Greyback. The 4 stood on both sides of the rostrum one by one, and then scanned the sporadic people sitting on the council seats with unkind eyes. After confirming that most of the people were present, Bella shouted loudly with her broken gong voice, "Let us, with warm applause, welcome the great Dark Lord, the savior of the wizarding world, and the greatest leader of immortality." After finishing speaking, he took the lead in applauding frantically, seeing that the other party stopped acting, and finding everyone else's hearts would inevitably sink a bit. You must know that just before yesterday, when the other party reported the scene, it would still be in the name of Cornelius Fudge, Minister of Magic of the United Kingdom. However, today the other party directly told all the truth, only short of reporting Voldemort's name, but with Bella's character of crazily adoring Voldemort, she would not directly say the name of her master. Accompanied by the crazy woman's announcement, a curled up monster slowly walked in through the open side door of the Parliament Hall. Monster. This is the first word that comes to mind when everyone sees this thing for the first time. The thing that came in from the side door of the Parliament Hall could no longer be called a human being at all. It was only half the height of an ordinary person when it was curled up. The very weird crutches in this section, the white color scheme, and the bumpy sound when it falls on the marble floor make people feel creepy. The MPs sitting in the distance just felt abnormally puzzled, while the MPs sitting on the edge of the rostrum only felt the cold coming from their paws. It was not a weird crutch at all, but a femur bone of an adult. The half-length monster in front of him slowly moved towards the rostrum with that white femur bone propped up. Finally, the monster who came to the rostrum slowly took off the hood on the top of his head with his withered hands like branches tremblingly. The moment they saw the hooded face of the other party, everyone present could not help but gasp. What a terrifying face it was. Although Mr. Cornelius Fudge was not considered a handsome man before, no matter how he commented, he was still a healthy man. And the cheek exposed by the other party at this moment is a terrifying monster at all. The skin melts on the cheekbones like wax. Under the skin, there is no muscle or fat, and the hair on the top of the head is completely gone. At first glance, it is just a moving skeleton. On the right side of the cheek, a half-covered golden mask was worn, and a large hole appeared in the middle of the left cheek. Through the hole, one can clearly see the cheekbones and teeth of the other party, and the air breathed from deep in the throat passes through the gap between the hole and the teeth. He made an extremely low breathing sound, which was extremely strange, like the sound made by a bone flute, made of whale leg bones when a native Indian high priest sacrificed to the undead. The deep breathing echoed continuously throughout the hall, causing everyone present to hold their breath. And that weird monster, leaning on a small stool, stood behind the rostrum with difficulty, looking at everyone present with its eyeballs that were about to fall out. Mr. Rufus Scrimger, the lost lamb, explain to them your plan. As long as you prove your worth, I will not regret my reward at all. You will receive the Dark Mark, and you will be able to obtain honor and wealth beyond your imagination. After scanning the entire field, the monster finally started to speak. While pointing his withered fingers at Mr. Scrimger, he used his usual words to win the opponent's loyalty. Mr. Scrimger, who was called out in public, had no choice but to stand up, and then, under the various gazes of other people, he slowly came directly under the rostrum. Mr. Scrimger, who arrived at the location, took a silver suitcase with the logo of the Ministry of Magic from Bella's crazy woman. Then he put it on the ground in front of him, then took out his wand and swiped it on his left thumb. A drop of crystal clear blood dripped onto the Ministry of Magic logo on the silver suitcase, followed by the sound of machinery turning. The silver suitcase in front of him slowly opened automatically, and there were some strange things lying inside, at least in the eyes of these old school wizards. And some congressmen who have worked as auras are very familiar with these things. They are all alchemy guns modified by Augustus. These items were sold to the Ministry of Magic through Lucius Malfoy and had always been in Mr. Scrimgeour's custody. However, as the other party's position was revoked by Mr. Cornelius G, and these items were introduced by him, they were also sealed in the warehouse of the Ministry of Magic. And looking at the well-preserved weapons in front of you, you can only sigh silently, then pick up a brand new AK rifle, show it in front of everyone, and then say slowly, "Today I will teach you how to use these things, so that you can serve the Lord Dark Lord when you attack Hogwarts." Chapter 175 The Death of Old Bock. Hearing Mr. Scrimgeour's introduction, everyone present opened their mouths wide open. They couldn't believe what they were facing now. Although most ordinary people in the wizarding world don't know much about the history of muggles and everything that happened. But these people in this Parliament Hall are basically the patriarchs of various magic families, or outstanding members of noble families. Compared with other ordinary people, they are more sensitive to politics, and their desire for knowledge is more persistent, since the sudden change in the magical world in Augustus. Many people present have studied the history of the Muggle world, and of course they know what Mr. Scrimgeour is doing now, but they just don't dare to believe the facts in front of them. What Voldemort said next made them fall into the abyss even more, only to hear the other party speak slowly in that terrifying voice. "Give me your wands. You don't need them for the next battle. Mr. Scrimgeour will teach you how to use them. You just need to bring your infinite loyalty to me, and the belief of brave sacrifice for the future, to face those children who haven't experienced anything yet." As he said that, the 4 Death Eaters headed by Bella had already started to take out their wands. 2 of them were on the 1st floor, and the remaining 2 were on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and they began to ask everyone present for them wand. Should we look at Mr. Scrimgeour's teaching again? In case we can't learn it, we must know that time is running out now. I'm not unwilling to give up my life for the Dark Lord, but I'm afraid that, because of my personal mistakes, it will affect the smooth implementation of your great plan. Seeing Barty Crouch Jr. getting closer and closer to him, the old Mr. Bork on the 3rd floor seemed very nervous at the moment. Of course he didn't want to hand over his wand. Handing over a wand in the wizarding world means giving up the identity of a wizard, which is a great shame for all wizards, let alone a person like him who has always been in the right and wrong. They didn't even want to hand over their only support. Most of them thought that when Voldemort was going to attack Hogwarts, they would take advantage of the chaotic situation to use apparition to escape from the scene. However, most of them are not proficient enough to cast spells without a wand. Once they hand over the wands in their hands, it really means that they will become cannon fodder for the opponent to attack Hogwarts. All escape routes were blocked. Of course, for your loyalty, I would like to ask Mr. Scrimgeour to tell you more, but I think that would be too much time. I have a simpler method. Miss Bella, show them, just for Mr. Bork. The refusal in his impression did not come through. Voldemort purposely looked up at Mr. Bork's terrified face and said in a low growl. Bella, who received the order, seemed very excited, probably because the Dark Lord, whom she had always admired, called her name instead of her husband's surname. The crazy woman jumped to Mr. Scrimgeour's side, snatched the brand new AK rifle from the opponent's hand with a full face of arrogance, then pulled the bolt skillfully and raised the gun to aim at the 3rd floor. Mr. Bock pulled the trigger. Boom. A loud gunshot echoed continuously in the hall, making everyone instantly quiet, and even Mr. Scrimgeour beside Bella had no time to react. A bullet with green light was fired from the elegant rifling in the barrel, and it pierced Mr. Bork's chest in one shot. The bullet carried powerful kinetic energy and knocked the chairs behind him into sawdust. Mr. Bork looked at the bloody hole in his chest and pointed at Voldemort on the rostrum. He wanted to speak, but was choked by his own blood. Cough cough cough. The severe cough was very clear after the gunshot, and the coughing sound only lasted for a short time. Only half a minute later, Mr. Bork lay in his position and died motionless, shooting the bullseye. These stupid muggle inventions work just fine, just for them to kill each other. It's really a group of cruel and ignorant people. They can kill each other so efficiently without magic. Bella, who finished a perfect shot, blew the gunpowder smoke, danced and shouted loudly, looking crazy like a gorilla who got an apple. Looking at the crazy woman next to him, Mr. Scrimger felt extremely annoyed. He flew over to snatch the AK rifle from the opponent's hand and shouted loudly, "What are you doing? How can you carry out such a killing for no reason? This kind of killing is worthless. This is completely different from what you said for the future of the wizarding world. You crazy people." Before Mr. Scrimger could vent his anger, he was forcibly interrupted by the madwoman in front of him. The other party held up the AK rifle and aimed the muzzle directly at Mr. Scrimger's head. Then with his signature crazy smiling face, he asked maliciously, "Why do you feel sad for him? Do you still want to go back to that Dumbledore? I think you are not loyal to Lord Dark Lord at all. You vile idiot, you." Just when the other party wanted to continue insulting Mr. Scrimger, the rifle in Bella's hand was returned to Mr. Scrimger's hand by an invisible force. "Please continue to explain, Mr. Scrimger. We are running out of time now. It is past 12 o'clock tonight. The International Union of Wizards Conference in Paris is about to be held. At that time, we will be passive and our righteous actions will be shamed. So we have to go to Hogwarts as soon as possible to avoid more serious consequences caused by the other party, and to avoid the future of our British wizarding world being educated to extremes by that group of people." Voldemort's voice came from the top of Mr. Scrimger's head. Although the words were full of majestic tones, it seemed so ironic to Mr. Scrimger's ears. The other party had just let his subordinates go and executed a lifelong member of the Wizengamot Council without any reason. This was already a very serious violation of the laws of the British magic community. It is shameless to say that such a violent and unreasonable method is for some just act. But thinking of his identity and the situation he was in now, Mr. Scrimger could only bite the bullet and began to explain the use of the AK rifle to everyone present. Thanks to the maturity of this gun model and the succinct usage specifications, the speech did not take too much time. After a brief explanation, Mr. Scrimger quietly retreated to a corner of the rostrum, waiting for the protagonist behind the rostrum to deliver today's final speech. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.